Chapter 1642. During the talk on the top of the Heavenly Sword sect, Han Fei told Luo Xiaobai and the others almost everything he knew. In the eyes of others, these were all shocking secrets. But after knowing them, they were actually just that. Most things in the world were like this. Now, even if Luo Xiaobai and the others knew these secrets, they would only know more about the outside world. They had to rely on themselves to cultivate, and no one else could help them. However, on the other hand, they knew that in the so-called cage, there were explorers everywhere. An army of 1,000,000, which increased the sense of urgency. If they were still in their current realm, how many people could they resist? If they wanted to stand at the top of this sea, they needed to become venerables. Only venerables had a certain ability to save their lives. Of course, that was only relative to the ordinary creatures in this sea. In the face of kings, emperors, or even stronger existences, venerables were just like ants. However, there was no doubt that becoming a venerable was a basic condition. The higher the realm, the fewer people there would be at that level. Although Han Fei could easily kill dozens of venerables, it was quite difficult for a venerable to die when Han Fei wasn't around. At the venerable realm, it was usually a close battle. If they were adventuring in the vast sea, it would be easier for venerable powerhouses to grow. At that time, they would not face dangers everywhere, but dangers in some dangerous places. After eating and drinking, Han Fei got up. Xiaobai, I still have some things to do. During this period, I need the three of you to help me integrate the big families in the 1,000-star city, plan the use of the 1,000-star proving ground, and preside over the construction of the teleportation array from the 36 towns to the 1,000-star city. Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly and stretched out her hand. Han Fei. Luo Xiaobai nodded. I need a token from your subordinates. Han Fei immediately patted his thigh and scanned with his perception. In a place 2 islands away, he saw that Wang Lin was taking in a small family. Han Fei immediately shouted, Wang Lin, come to the Heavenly Sword sect. As soon as Wang Lin heard Han Fei's summon, he immediately sighed and rushed to the Heavenly Sword sect without a second thought. When Wang Lin arrived, he saw that there was a big hot pot on Han Fei's side, and he was enjoying it. Wang Lin bowed. The first thing he did was to offer Han Fei's star badge with both hands. In terms of self-awareness, Wang Lin had always had a high level of awareness. Commander Han, I'm here. Do you have any instructions? Han Fei said lightly, yes. Well done. These are all my teammates. Gather your people. When I'm not here, listen to Luo Xiaobai's arrangements for the 1,000-star family. As Han Fei spoke, he took the star badge and handed it to Luo Xiaobai naturally. Han Fei even felt that if it were Luo Xiaobai who was the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, she would be more comfortable than him. Wang Lin certainly knew who Luo Xiaobai was. She was Han Fei's teammate, a heavenly talent of the Thug Academy, and a heavenly talent of the Luo family. Besides, Luo Xiaobai was not weak. She had already reached the level of an advanced explorer. These 3 people were all the same age as Han Fei. Such a young advanced explorer meant great potential. Wang Lin immediately clasped his fists. I understand. I'll listen to Miss Luo's arrangements. And Luo Xiaobai said to Han Fei via voice transmission, you said that you wanted to gather all the people above the law enforcer level to fight. What do you mean? Are you going to the Shuemu heaven? Is the cage really going to collapse soon? Han Fei's heart did a flip. Luo Xiaobai is really smart. She understood my intentions without me saying it. The combat power of the Yin-Yang heaven was not enough. If these people were counted, it was still necessary. On the Shuemu heaven's side, only the Baibei royal city and the Cloud Sea divine tree were left. In the future, there would definitely be many battles. Originally, he didn't have to worry about them for the time being. However, the energy in the cage was overflowing, and there might be problems at any time. Once something happened to the cage, could the 35 venerables of the Yin-Yang heaven resist it? Therefore, if anything happened, he had to be prepared in advance. The Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuemu heaven helped each other. Now that the disaster of the Yin-Yang heaven had been resolved, if he could destroy the Baibei royal city. The only thing that the two sides had to deal with was the unstable situation in the cage. And if he helped the Life Queen get rid of the disaster first, it would be natural for the Life Queen to help him in the future. Han Fei nodded. Okay. Finally, it's a combat power. The battle over there must be fought. How exactly? I haven't thought it through yet. But it won't be very far away. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Okay, got it. The tacit understanding they had cultivated since childhood always saved them a lot of trouble explaining. After handing everything here to Luo Xiaobai, Han Fei gave all the sun moon shells he had to Lu Renkuang. Han Fei only kept one for himself, which contained a lot of spiritual spring, spiritual stones, demonic stones, and spiritual fruits. After all, Lu Renkuang had worked in the logistics division. Han Fei said, Wang Lin, go back and tell all the available personnel of the logistics division to come here. Wang Lin, yes, Marshal Han. Lu Renkuang was dumbfounded and swallowed frantically. Fei Fei. This is too much, isn't it? Han Fei patted Lu Renkuang on the shoulder and said, you can fill your own pockets. But as long as it's enough. It's not necessarily a good thing to get too many things for free. Xiaobai, you decide. Luo Xiaobai grunted, expressing her understanding. Zhang Xuanyu looked at Han Fei. Fei Fei. What about me? Han Fei said leisurely, Xiaobai will arrange it for you. Why are you asking me? Zhang Xuanyu, while the Thousand-Star City was celebrating, Han Fei had a meal and then came to the gate of the Chao family. For a long time, although Han Fei's impression of the Chao family was not bad, it was definitely not good. The Chao family never took sides in major events. For example, when the Faceless Man attacked the Thousand-Star City, old Han asked Chao Tianji to help, but this guy didn't. Han Fei could roughly understand the Chao family. In many cases, not helping either side was better to protect oneself. However, this was actually not good for him. If you don't offer help in the snow, do you expect others to miss you? That was impossible. Therefore, when Han Fei came, he didn't show a friendly face. Han Fei said, Chao Tianji, come out and meet me. The Chao family. In the inner mansion, the venerables were all ready at this moment. Han Fei's strength had already been fully revealed. The joint attack of 5 peak-level advanced venerables killed 4 of them in the blink of an eye. This kind of combat power could no longer be described as strong. It could be said that Han Fei was invincible in the Thousand-Star City at this moment. Ancestor, the faces of the venerables were gloomy, and someone even sighed slightly. If they had known this would happen, they would have taken action. Chao Tianji's eyes were cold. After more than 10 minutes, he sighed. I'll go meet this guy. Outside the Chao family. Chao Tianji removed the mountain protecting array. At this moment, Han Fei was the leader of the Thousand-Star City. Han Fei could even kill old monster Chu, so the Chao family was certainly no match for him. Therefore, it didn't make much difference whether this mountain protecting array existed or not. Seeing Chao Tianji, Han Fei was more sure that the Chao family should have something to do with the war giants. He was tall and burly, with bulging muscles, and taller than ordinary people. Chao Tianji looked at Han Fei. May I know why you are here, General Han? The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. Why? I should have made it very clear just now. From now on, there will be no big families in the Thousand-Star City. If there is one, I will take it. Your Chao family is no exception. Chao Tianji narrowed his eyes. What do you intend to do with the Chao family, General Han? Han Fei said, the resources of the Chao family must be handed over in full. All those above the Hidden Fisher realm, gather and prepare to fight with the army. You are no exception. Chao Tianji asked, is General Han being too aggressive? The Chao family is not the Chu sect. Han Fei said, In my eyes, the Chow family is no different from the Chu sect. If you refuse, I don't mind slaughtering the Chow family. To me, it doesn't make a difference whether I have a few more or less venerables. I can cultivate venerables. But I don't need any disobedient families. Chao Tianji's heart sank. Han Fei was stronger than Han Guanqiu, Ren Tianfen, and the thug patriarch. Others might still care about the entire thousand-star city and the peak combat power in the human world. But what about Han Fei? He had no scruples. If they didn't agree, they would fight each other to the death. The point was that Chao Tianji had fought with Old Monster Chu. In terms of strength, Old Monster Chu was actually not much stronger than him. However, Old Monster Chu's time spell was too disgusting. It was almost unbreakable. Now, Han Fei had broken it. Old Monster Chu was also killed. At this moment, if Han Fei wanted to destroy the Chao family, it wouldn't be a big problem. Chao Tianji took a deep breath. Okay. Everything is up to you, General Han. The Chao family doesn't need anything. But can the Chao family keep a few core members? Han Fei grinned. You want to save Chao Qiu, right? Chao Qiu has inherited some of the inheritance of the god of war, so you must protect him. Seeing that Chao Tianji didn't speak, Han Fei snorted coldly. Does the Chao family know about the war giants? Suddenly, Chao Tianji's pupils shrank. I don't know what General Han is talking about. Han Fei chuckled. Perhaps, in your clan, someone has found the place where the giant king died and accidentally found the news of the god of war. However, you can't contact the god of war at all. You can only hope that his bloodline will work. How pitiful. Chao Tianji stared at Han Fei closely. It seems that General Han knows a lot. Han Fei said disdainfully, I can even tell you clearly that the god of war has not fallen. Looking at Chao Tianji's gradually stiffening expression, Han Fei sneered. I even have a relationship with the giant king. But my relationship with them has nothing to do with your Chao family at all. Chao Qiu and the others also need to participate in the war. Even I have to participate in the war. Who do you think the Chao family is? This matter has been decided. There are no exceptions. The Chao family, don't try to do anything. Just wait for someone to come and take over. Chao Tianji, after thinking for a long time, said, the general situation of the thousand-star city has been settled. What war is there? Do we need so many combat forces? Han Fei smiled faintly and didn't answer. Instead, he stretched out his hand and said, Star bead, give it to me. Chao Tianji, first update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1643. Before he came, Han Fei felt that the battle between him and Old Monster Chu might not end overnight. After all, even Old Monster Chu dared to call himself a king, while he himself had never fought against a false king. Therefore, Han Fei didn't expect that wiping out the big clans in the thousand-star city would go so smoothly. However, Han Fei wasn't surprised. After all, he had accumulated enough resources. He had truly exchanged his life for this strength. After going through 2 kings' tribulations, an ordinary person would have died long ago. Han Fei knew that his luck was indeed a little better than before. Otherwise, who knows how many times he would have died. Although luck was illusory, it wasn't something that he couldn't grasp at all. For example, he had promised the Life Queen that he would deal with the White Shell Kingdom. This was his promise. If he completed it, he would gain a share of luck. If he couldn't complete it, what was the point of talking about luck? In Han Fei's opinion, when dealing with the White Armor Emperor, as long as the Life Queen restrained the White Armor Emperor, the possibility of victory was very high. Even if they couldn't kill the White Armor Emperor in the end, the White Shell Kingdom wouldn't be able to compete with the Cloud Sea Divine Tree in the future. When the time came, the war between the 2 sides would be settled, and he would have to think of a way to quickly make a trip to the glazed sky and bring back Yin-Er's Yang body. Once Yin and Yang merged and passed through the cycle of reincarnation, it would be his opportunity to become a king. Unfortunately, all the plans couldn't keep up with the changes. Han Fei had no idea that his state of mind would change so much after wiping out the aristocratic families. At this moment, Han Fei felt that as long as he wanted to, he could break through to the peak level of the Venerable Realm at any time. Once he reached the peak, he would only be a step away from becoming a half-step monarch. However, he couldn't break through yet. Moreover, he had always had a question. Where did old Monster Chu undergo his tribulation? Although Han Fei didn't know the origin of the fake kings, he estimated that the heavenly tribulation was suddenly interrupted, or a certain place lacked a certain special power. That was why the fake kings existed. The cage could be that kind of place. In that case, the place where old Monster Chu underwent his tribulation might be a place similar to a cage. At this moment, Han Fei had 3 9-star beads from the Chu sect in his hand. Those supremacy star beads were most likely the places where old Monster Chu had successfully transcended the tribulation. At this time, there were very few people in the 1,000-star testing field. After all, Han Fei had slaughtered 1,000 stars and caused a rain of blood today. It was a good time for him to make a breakthrough. Therefore, there were many cultivators in the 1,000-star city at this moment. With the art of deception, Han Fei changed the appearance of a random stranger and found an empty corner. He held a 9-star pearl in one hand and the 9 palaces ruler of fate in the other, testing the danger level of each 9-star pearl. In the end, the first star bead showed an ominous hexagram. Ominous divination? Perhaps for ordinary people, this was really a dangerous hexagram, but for Han Fei, he had experienced it countless times. The danger level of this pearl was not high, and he could completely withstand it. Han Fei licked his lips and chose to enter. Han Fei didn't use the navigator to search for old Monster Chu's star beads because he planned to search for every one of the 9-star beads. Together with the ones from the Chao family and the ones from the Thug Academy, he had a total of 9 9-star beads. Han Fei planned to go in one by one. Buzz, after entering the first star bead, Han Fei saw a large area of blue light. Looking at the flow speed of this light, Han Fei said in surprise, "The river of time?" Yes, this space couldn't be sensed at all, and Han Fei didn't know how big it was. There was chaos everywhere, and only blue light could be seen flowing. Han Fei could also see a lot of rotten bones in the blue time. Some had already turned into powder, some were broken into pieces, and some were still relatively new. Han Fei immediately sneered. That idiot old Monster Chu wants people to step into the river of time. However, none of them can withstand the erosion of time. As he spoke, Han Fei stepped forward and put his hand with the time ring into the blue halo. However, after about 10 seconds, Han Fei saw that his hand was decaying, so he quickly pulled it out. It seemed that the time ring was not omnipotent. It could only resist the general Great Tao of Time. If old Monster Chu had reached the King Realm and used the Great Tao of Time, Han Fei might not be able to resist it with this time ring alone. A lot of ideas suddenly popped up in Han Fei's mind. In fact, it was not that the Great Tao of Time was not powerful. If he didn't use the time ring, he might really be no match for old Monster Chu. Besides, even if his strength completely crushed old Monster Chu, this guy still lasted for a long time. In a moment of carelessness, old Monster Chu returned to his previous state. Han Fei couldn't help thinking, if I also know the time spell, I'm afraid I can use it very well. This is at least a supreme technique comparable to the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. Han Fei was still immersed in his fantasy, but the old turtle said, "No, this is not the river of time. This is the periphery of the river of time. But this space seems to be connected to the river of time. As a result, the flow of time here has changed." Han Fei quickly came back to his senses. How do I judge the flow of time here? The old turtle said, "You can go out and try, and you'll know." Han Fei thought, that's true. So he activated the Gemini Divine Technique. After a while, calculating the time, Han Fei reopened this space. Han Fei quickly came to a conclusion. 10 times. The time here is 10 times faster. 1 day here is 10 days outside. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. No wonder there are so many strong masters in the Chu sect. So it turns out that the 9-star beads are the reason? The old turtle nodded. It's very likely. The time spell was also comprehended from here. In such an unobstructed flow of time for a long time, it's not impossible to comprehend the time spell. Han Fei thought of something. This place was actually very suitable for Zhang Xuanyu. If this guy came in, he would definitely poke time with a spear. According to his talent, maybe one day he would be able to poke a wisp of time with a spear. And Han Fei didn't have to deliberately study it. He could directly cross the Jade Bridge and pretend to walk on the way of time. In this way, he could directly turn the way of time into one of his own. Han Fei licked his lips. With a thought in his mind, the Jade Bridge appeared. Han Fei quickly walked to the center of the bridge and went straight down the steps. Han Fei imagined that he might as well take the way of time like old Monster Chu first. However, this time, Han Fei only took 3 steps and couldn't go on. On the other side of the Jade Bridge, the old turtle couldn't see Han Fei, so he didn't know what Han Fei was doing. The first time, Han Fei's attempt failed. The second time, Han Fei set his goal as being able to reverse time and go back to a moment ago. This time, when he went down the 5th step, Han Fei couldn't hold it anymore. The third time, Han Fei set his goal as being able to freeze time for a short time and control time to speed up and slow down. As a result, it was easy this time. Han Fei walked directly to the bottom of the bridge. From then on, Han Fei saw that the road on the Tianqi Avenue turned into a flowing blue halo of the way of time. When the Jade Bridge disappeared, the old turtle asked, "What are you doing?" Han Fei smiled faintly. "Comprehending the way of time." The old turtle exclaimed, "But can I comprehend it just because I say so?" The old turtle didn't know how powerful the Jade Bridge was. Hearing what Han Fei said, he was stunned. Damn, is there such a heaven-defying bridge in this world? Han Fei didn't intend to hide it from the old turtle. After all, if he needed to use the time spell in future battles, the old turtle would know that he had mastered the way of time sooner or later. However, Han Fei didn't explain too much. It seemed that this star bead was just a cultivation space. He couldn't go through the river of time yet. After all, the power of corrosion was too dangerous. 1 day later, Han Fei grabbed the 9-palace fate ruler and pointed at the second 9-star bead. As a result, the 9-palace fate ruler gave a great luck hexagram. Shoot, Han Fei was shocked. This was the first time he had seen a great luck hexagram, right? Had the Chu sect not discovered the secret of this star bead yet? Han Fei was overjoyed and naturally entered without hesitation. As soon as he entered, Han Fei immediately saw a world. Hiss, at this moment, Han Fei suddenly took a deep breath. This is the city of righteousness? Han Fei didn't know what to say. Yes, this was the real city of righteousness, the former city of Yu. Although it was not the whole city of righteousness, it covered at least 3,000 kilometers. However, Han Fei looked up and saw a clear sky. Han Fei scanned with his perception, only to find that there were marine creatures in the surrounding sea. Han Fei stretched out his hand and a fishing rod appeared. Swish! The hook pierced through the void and an explorer thunderous fire blue shark was pulled back by Han Fei. The thunderous fire blue shark was probably stunned too. I was swimming in the sea. Why did I suddenly break through the void? When it saw Han Fei, the thunderous fire blue shark was about to take action, only to feel its soul stiffen and its body stiffen. Its divine soul was actually being controlled. Han Fei pointed a finger at it and killed the thunderous fire blue shark. That was its bad luck. In Han Fei's eyes, fish were for eating, so there was no reason for him to let it go. When Han Fei clearly sensed that the power of his soul was growing, he was sure that this world was real. Han Fei's face immediately sank. Old Yuan, where are we now? The old turtle didn't answer this question but said, this is the real world. I feel that there seems to be a strong expert in this city. Huh? Han Fei scanned with his perception. No. The city is a mess. Alas, I failed to change this big city after all. Countless people died here. Han Fei could roughly guess why some of the islands disappeared. At that time, the City of Justice and the 100,000 Mountains were divided because of the earth veins. The 100,000 Mountains were split into many parts, most of which were in this star bead. Part of the city area and some villages and towns around it should have become today's 1,000-star city. At that time, the floating stones that Shiman Linghan obtained were not enough to float the entire City of Justice. But some of them might have been used. Han Fei closed his eyes and compared the remaining City of Justice with the 1,000-star city. Like a jigsaw puzzle, he suddenly realized something. After such a long time, although he thought that the 1,000-star city came from the land of the City of Justice, it was just an assumption. However, because of the vicissitudes of life, those floating islands had already changed. Oh, no, the terrain of the floating islands itself had also changed drastically because of human activities. Han Fei took a deep breath. How many floating stones did Shiman Linglan find to create the current yin-yang sky? It was a pity that she didn't succeed in the last battle. Otherwise, it might have been a different ending. Thinking about it, Han Fei entered the city and went directly to the place where the city lord's mansion was located. There were ruins and some broken walls. Most of the things had turned into dust in history. Dang, dang, dang! Suddenly, Han Fei saw a large number of phantoms in front of him, like an army, and he could even feel a murderous aura. For a moment, Han Fei understood that this was an independent time-secret realm. If this was the case, then everything made sense. If this was a time-secret realm, who could say that this place was not real? For example, the space where little time lived, who could say that it was not real? But Han Fei was puzzled. If this was a time-secret realm, then did he cross the timeline? Chapter 1644. The old turtle knew Han Fei's doubts and immediately explained, this should be a separate time fragment, which can't be compared with the real river of time. It should only exist to preserve something. Han Fei nodded. Besides, some of the traces here are newly damaged and contain a lot of thunder power. Old Monster Chu must have passed the tribulation here. However, there is a very strong knife intent here. I don't know where it came from. The Chu sect had already obtained this star bead. The reason why Old Monster Chu didn't pass the tribulation here was that he didn't dare to. He might have also found that this was a secret realm of time, but he didn't know the success rate of passing the tribulation here. Of course, now it seemed that this secret realm didn't have the conditions to pass the tribulation and become a king at all. Han Fei grinned. If it's just to preserve something, it'll be easy to find. After that, Han Fei held the nautical panorama in his hand, and the nautical panorama began to spin rapidly. After a while, Han Fei stood on a small island outside the City of Justice. Here, there were also broken walls and ruins. However, this place was even worse than the City of Justice. In the ruins of the City of Justice, walls could occasionally be seen, but the walls on this small island had already turned into dust. However, when Han Fei landed on this small island, his face turned livid and then slightly pale. Because he found that this small island was actually the original Grand Desolate Village. Gulp. At this moment, Han Fei's mood was quite complicated. What was in the 9-star bead? The last 9-star bead was almost safe. But it was impossible that every 9-star bead was safe. Had the danger here been cleared by the Chu sect? Han Fei walked 100 miles in one step and came directly to the small courtyard where he used to live. There, he had left a stone tablet. However, Han Fei's perception swept here several times and only found some traces of arrays. Except for this, there was nothing else. Next door was the small courtyard where Shiman Linglan used to live. Han Fei also scanned many times with his perception but still found nothing. Han Fei frowned slightly and was about to take out the nautical panorama when an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. The next moment, he appeared on the reef beach. Although the reef beach was no longer a reef beach, the seawater had receded far away, exposing most of the reefs. However, this place was still littered with reefs. Han Fei was very familiar with it. Even the positions of some reefs had never changed. Han Fei scanned the place with his perception. Although he didn't find anything, he immediately found a large stone slab that had been cut flat. Han Fei grabbed casually and the slate was directly lifted. He saw a bone in the stone slab, a rib. Who would take something like that? Even if Old Monster Chu and the others wanted to explore the 9-star pearl, they probably wouldn't have the slightest bit of interest in a bone buried by the shore. Han Fei, however, looked solemn. His hand trembled slightly. When he grabbed the rib bone, he suddenly turned around. In the City of Justice, 2 streaks of black light arrived in an instant. Han Fei was about to take action, but the 2 streaks of black light stopped half a meter away from Han Fei. Han Fei just made a gesture of taking action, but he immediately found that something was wrong. He recognized the 2 streaks of black light. The Blade of Vengeance? Han Fei was shocked. This was Shiman Linglan's law enforcement blade, an extremely rare weapon-type law enforcement ability. Han Fei took a step forward and in the blink of an eye, he came to the City of Justice. Han Fei shouted, "Shiman Linglan, Linglan!" Swish, swish, the Blade of Vengeance followed Han Fei and also came to the City of Justice. At this time, the old turtle said, "The source of crisis I felt was this pair of knives. However, there seems to be no one here." Han Fei frowned, looked down at the Blade of Vengeance in front of him, and reached out to touch it. The 2 knives were Shiman Linglan's law enforcement weapons. How could they exist alone? However, at the moment when Han Fei reached out to touch them, with a ding sound, the 2 blades clashed. The black weapons started to fade, turning from black to silver. And at this moment, information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name: A Blade of Hope. Introduction: A postnatal spiritual treasure. Some people sacrificed their lives to become a knife spirit. It crossed the river of time and was polished by time. Holding the Blade of Hope can enhance one's luck. With the nourishment of hope, this blade may be able to enter the primordial world. Quality: unknown, recastable, unrefined. A remark: as long as hope exists, this knife will not be broken. Remark 2: in the long time, the Blade of Hope has been looking for its master. Han Fei took a deep breath. When he saw the Blade of Hope, even though he was a peerless figure just a moment ago, his body trembled involuntarily at this moment. He remembered that on the day the City of Justice was destroyed, Shiman Linglan should have gone to fight with the Sea Monster Grand Monarch. She fought against 3 Sea Monster Grand Monarchs and was defeated in the end. However, no one saw where Shiman Linglan died. Therefore, if he hadn't experienced the War Soul Realm, he wouldn't have known. Shiman Linglan should have known before she died that she couldn't cross the river of time. Therefore, she chose to sacrifice herself and put her hope in the Blade of Revenge. She hoped to use this to cross the river of time. Because the Blade of Hope was invisible in nature. It was a kind of law and the power of the Great Path. Therefore, it was indeed possible that Shiman Linglan did this. Han Fei's palms trembled slightly, so, the Blade of Hope in front of him was Shiman Linglan? When Han Fei's hands touched the blade, they seemed to be in perfect harmony. The Blade of Hope naturally flowed into Han Fei's hands, and a scimitar tattoo appeared on each of Han Fei's wrists. The old turtle said in surprise, "Has it recognized its master? Isn't it too easy for this weapon to recognize its master? It didn't even suck a mouthful of blood from you." Han Fei ignored the old turtle. What does this guy know? Han Fei unconsciously smiled bitterly, and with a thought, the Blade of Hope appeared in his hands again. Even though it was an invisible blade, it gave off a warm feeling when held in his hand. Shiman Linglan sacrificed herself, but it turned out to be a Blade of Hope. Han Fei's mood was extremely complicated. After reading the introduction and quality of the Blade of Hope, Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, what is Hongmeng?" The old turtle was stunned for a while. Hongmeng? The old turtle said in surprise, "Where did you hear this term?" This knife? Han Fei asked, what's wrong with it? The old turtle said, well, I don't know, but it should be impossible. This empress had only seen one sentence of explanation in an ancient record. Hung Meng, that is a mysterious world before the beginning of the world, before time and space. It is an era that exists longer than the primeval era. It can't even be called an era, because it has no concept of time and space. It can only be called a kind of existence, right? Although the old turtle's explanation didn't reveal anything, Han Fei already knew the extraordinariness of the Blade of Hope. This was an invulnerable saber. As long as there was hope, these two knives would be there. And the demon purification pot couldn't read its quality at all. This showed that the level of the Blade of Hope had exceeded the concept of a holy weapon and a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, reaching a level that even the demon purification pot couldn't identify. This was probably the so-called auspicious divination of the nine-palace ruler of Providence. However, Han Fei wasn't very happy. As if thinking of something, Han Fei suddenly summoned the navigator and asked, is Shiman Linglan's soul still hidden in the Blade of Hope? As a result, Han Fei was greatly disappointed. The navigator didn't turn at all. Han Fei took a breath and looked at the navigator again. Is Shiman Linglan in this 9-star pearl? But the navigator still didn't turn. At this point, the number of times the navigator could be used today had been used up. As for the Blade of Hope, it was his greatest opportunity, but it was also the greatest danger for others. Han Fei was thinking, if it were someone else, the result might be completely different. He had lived with Shiman Linglan for so long, and except for himself, no one else could touch the Blade of Vengeance. Han Fei threw this 9-star pearl into Forge the Universe and put it away. This secret realm of time would never appear in the world again in the future. Although he didn't want to admit it, Han Fei couldn't find any reason why Shiman Linglan was still alive. Time. Han Fei was silent for a long time and suddenly took a breath. The Tao of Time is indeed terrifying. I wonder. If I go to the extreme of the Tao of Time, will it be possible to enter the river of time? Break the rules of the Tao of Time and change my fate? Unfortunately, these were not what he could imagine now. Without the Time Dragon Carp and the Time Ring, he might not even be able to beat Old Monster Chu. This was the truth. Fortunately, Han Fei met Old Monster Chu now, which made him realize the horror of the Tao of Time. Only by walking on this path could he avoid being tricked by others in future battles. After sitting cross-legged in the City of Justice for a day, Han Fei collected his thoughts and left this world of star pearls. For Han Fei, he still had a lot of things to do. Immersing in the memories of the past would only make people weak. Collecting his thoughts, Han Fei opened the third 9-star pearl. And this time, the hexagram of the 9-palace ruler directly showed a great misfortune hexagram. Besides, this hexagram seemed to be a little unstable, and it was slightly swaying toward the desperate hexagram. Seeing this scene, Han Fei flipped his hand and threw a stream of chaotic gas over. Seeing that it didn't work, Han Fei threw 6 streams of chaotic gas in a row, which turned the great misfortune hexagram into a misfortune hexagram. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. As expected of the 9-palace ruler. This ability to change fate was not an exaggeration to call it a divine artifact. When the hexagram turned into a misfortune hexagram, Han Fei stepped into the world of this star pearl without hesitation. As soon as Han Fei entered this space, he felt a boundless murderous aura coming at him. The air here was full of death, and the pressure in the air made Han Fei's heart tremble. Han Fei exclaimed, "What a terrifying pressure!" Chapter 1645. Of the first 2 9-star beads, one was not dangerous to begin with, and the other was not dangerous to him. Then, at this moment, Han Fei knew that he was in great danger. When Han Fei took a closer look, he found that this was a wasteland that had been blown up by the flames of war. There was no sky in these ruins, but the entire space was dark red and the temperature was extremely high. Needless to say, this place was quite big. Unfortunately, his perception was limited. Han Fei's perception had been greatly reduced. he could only perceive that this world was more than 300 kilometers high and spanned an unknown distance. It seemed that this was another strange world. But these were not what shocked Han Fei the most. What shocked Han Fei was that the energy and spiritual energy contained in this world were so thick that the spiritual energy was surging into his body. Bang! Han Fei landed on this land, looked down, and was shocked to find that it was all spirit awakening fluid under his feet. Holy shit, what kind of godly place is this? The old turtle slowly said, I'm afraid you're in trouble. The old turtle said, this is a corpse-nurturing land, a very perfect corpse-nurturing land. Energy, spiritual energy, and spirit awakening fluid gathered. This meant that a king had fallen here a long time ago. However, the time and space here was obviously limited. If so much energy and spirit chi continued to flow in, this space would definitely become unstable and would definitely explode. Then, why hasn't it exploded yet? Han Fei was alarmed. Someone is cultivating here. The old turtle asked, however, apart from energy, spiritual energy, and spirit awakening fluid, there is also a lot of dead and decaying air in this space. What does that mean? Han Fei's face changed slightly. Corpse breeding ground. The old turtle asked again, is there a place to nurture corpses in yin-yang heaven? Holy shit, Han Fei shivered. Under the steps into the sea. At this moment, he knew where he was. At this moment, he was at the bottom of the steps into the sea, which was the place where the corpse puppets were raised. Back then, Yangming had been here when he was a peak stage elementary venerable one. At that time, when he tested it with the 9 palace ruler of Providence, he found a desperate lot first. That was the first time he had seen a desperate lot. At that time, Han Fei gave up here, thinking that he was not strong enough to deal with the dangers under the steps into the sea. Even if I'm at the peak of the high-rank exalt realm now. Measure it with the 9 palaces ruler of fortune. It was also a great misfortune hexagram. This meant that the strength of the corpse puppets here was at least at the pseudo-monarch realm. With his current strength, as long as it wasn't as dangerous as the King Tribulation, he shouldn't encounter a desperate situation hexagram. But this divination had always been swinging between great calamity and despair. This meant that the strength of this corpse was at least at the false monarch realm. Boom! Suddenly, Han Fei felt that it was 100 kilometers away. Something stepped on the ground. The next moment, all he saw was a corpse puppet. It stretched out its claws to grab him. Fuck! Sacrificing punch. Han Fei didn't hesitate. He turned around and delivered a heavy punch. Was it because there was too much energy in this space? The void energy chased after the sacrificing punch and blasted out forcefully. Bang! He only saw the corpse. He was knocked back more than 10 meters by Han Fei's punch. But it didn't slow down. In the next second, it was already in front of Han Fei. What a strong physique. Han Fei didn't have time to be shocked because the corpse puppet slapped at him. Boom! Han Fei felt as if he had been hit by a heavy hammer, and he was knocked back a kilometer. Only at this moment did Han Fei clearly see the appearance of this corpse. To Han Fei's surprise, the corpse did not look decayed at all. Instead, it looked like an evil playboy, even a bit like a pretty boy. His face was chiseled, and his eyes were fit and beautiful. His pupils were bright and full of expression. This was clearly the birth of a divine soul. In the process of retreating, Han Fei strengthened his body with the power of the Tao and stood still. At this time, Han Fei looked down at his badly mutilated arm and frowned. It was just one blow. Han Fei had come to the conclusion that this guy was the strongest of all the people he had met. The power of one blow exceeded old Monster Chu's pseudo-monarch power. Son of a bitch, this guy's body doesn't seem to be worse than mine. While he was talking, the corpse rushed at him again. Han Fei didn't give up and punched 1,000 times in a row with the invincible fist mark. This was a real hand-to-hand combat. Only the brave would win. This was the first freak that could fight him head-on in terms of physique. Bam! 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 The two fought for 3 minutes, and Han Fei felt that his flesh had been broken. And this corpse puppet, although it had been pushed back all the way by him, had now retreated more than 800 kilometers. However, the body of this corpse was only about the same as his. Han Fei continued, this guy's strength exceeds 30,000 waves. His physical level is extremely high, and his bones are not weaker than mine. However, he is also swallowing energy. This shows that he is not so strong that I can't defeat him. The old turtle said, imagine, if you cultivate for tens of thousands of years in such an environment, what will the result be? Han Fei's heart sank. Tens of thousands of years. I can blow up my cultivation. At this point, I'm afraid passing the heavenly tribulation will be a piece of cake. The old turtle said again, you may not be able to beat him. Although you can suppress him in all aspects now, that's because you have the power of the Great Path. However, you can't maintain this combat power forever. Once your time is up, who do you think will be the one to be hung up and beaten? Han Fei's face darkened, and with a roar, he drew his knife and cut the void, trying to use the power of space to cut the corpse into pieces. However, the corpse clasped his hands, and his sharp claws forcibly tore the space apart. Fuck! Han Fei said in shock, this guy can even tear space apart. The old turtle said, you can even use space cracks as weapons. It's just the same. It only shows that your comprehension of the art of space is not strong enough, but it doesn't mean that you can't use the great path of space. The old turtle said, this can't go on. The energy and spiritual energy here are endless. He can keep fighting. You have to see if he has a soul. Han Fei took a step back and moved 1,000 miles away. Han Fei instantly grabbed the embroidery needle, hit the heavenly gate, and shot out a cylindrical energy vortex. Bam! At the same time, Han Fei also threw out the heavenly god stab. Boom! However, the corpse seemed to be very sensitive to this kind of attack and even detonated its soul in advance. The 100-beast soul-devouring roar burst out, but the corpse's eyes burst out with a strange light, and a halo spurted out of his eyes, directly blocking Han Fei's 100-beast soul-devouring roar. At that moment, the corpse cackled wickedly. Finally, more people from your side are here, huh? I have been hungry for a long time. You are very strong, the strongest person I have ever met. However, you used the power of the Great Path, which is still not enough. Han Fei's eyes turned cold. You can talk. It seems that you are quite intelligent, isn't it? The corpse stood still and said leisurely, you flatter me. I opened my mind a long time ago. When the first person came in, I learned your human knowledge from him. I know that I am a corpse, kept by others. A muffled roar came from the throat of the corpse. Why? Do I have to be kept by others? Trapped in this deserted place for countless years? Human, if you can take me out, I won't kill you. The old turtle said, don't believe him. If he could go out, he would have gone out long ago. He wouldn't have waited until you came to tell you. This means that he can't go out through the star bead. Han Fei responded, of course I know that. I even know that. He can actually go out. As long as he possesses the souls of the people of the Choose sect who came before, it will be easy for him to go out. However, he is reluctant to give up his body. This corpse puppet is undoubtedly the strongest in the Yinyang sky. He is even stronger than me now. The old turtle said, his bones are not as strong as your indestructible golden body. Han Fei rolled his eyes. But I am not strong enough. If I can break through to the peak stage of the venerable realm and increase my strength, it will definitely be much better than now. Han Fei shouted, a corpse puppet is just a corpse puppet. Want to go out? In your dreams. Supreme Yinyang Wheel. Han Fei certainly wouldn't let this guy go out. However, he couldn't wait too long. He had to find a way to kill this guy as soon as possible. He could only use his ultimate move. Clatter. When the corpse puppet saw that Han Fei didn't pay any attention to him at all, and the moment the yin-yang pattern appeared, it ignored the space and appeared directly in front of him, which shocked him. I'm not convinced. Chilla. Dumb, boundless baleful aura and deathly aura gathered in front of the corpse, forming a resistance against the supreme yin-yang wheel. Ha ha ha. Do you think I didn't do anything? Although this world is a cage, it has long been integrated with me. This world is me, and I am this world. Outside. The level 3 fishery, the steps into the sea. Countless people scrambled to run out of the steps into the sea. Dumb, one after another, the sound of tremors shook from around the steps into the sea. Puff, there were quite a few people who vomited blood. They were annoyed by the vibrating sound. Most people took off on fishing boats. Someone asked, "What's wrong with the steps into the sea? Did something happen?" Someone shouted, "Everyone, leave quickly. There's something wrong with the steps into the sea again." An elderly man roared, "The steps into the sea is unstable. Don't continue to hunt for treasures." Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, a howl sounded above the sea. Someone exclaimed, "The evil shield is coming. Something big must have happened here. Everyone, retreat." On the ghost ship, Li Daxian frowned and said, "The steps into the sea. Are you sure it's your son? When did he go underground?" The elegant man next to Li Daxian was naturally Han Guanshu. He said, "There are only a few secrets in the yin-yang heaven. It's not surprising that he will encounter them sooner or later." Han Guanshu said with a smile, "After the corpse nurturing land, there is no place here that can stop him." Chapter 1646. Under the steps into the sea, in the corpse nurturing ground. Han Fei was speechless to find that the battle here was quite disadvantageous to him. Perhaps because the corpse puppet had been cultivating for so long that it could freely control the death energy and boundless evil energy in this corpse nurturing ground. Although the supreme yin-yang will was extremely powerful, it was only the power of Han Fei alone and couldn't fight against the whole world. The disintegration of the supreme yin-yang will made Han Fei's heart sink. Apocalypse divine technique. Swish. When a white light shone, the black smoke dissipated, which made Han Fei quite relieved. It seemed that the apocalypse great path was stronger than the supreme yin-yang wheel in dealing with evil. The corpse puppet was shrouded by the light beam and howled in pain as if suffering great pain. However, this pain only lasted for about 10 minutes, and the corpse puppet had already broken free from the shackles of the apocalypse divine technique. The old turtle said, "The corpse puppet is not an undead creature, so your purification effect is not great. You just purified the death energy it swallowed." Han Fei rolled his eyes and changed his great path again. This time, Han Fei used the great path of time that he had just obtained. The next moment, the two began to fight crazily. This time, Han Fei's every punch could slow down the speed of the corpse puppet from the great path of time. Bam! 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 For more than 10 minutes in a row, Han Fei almost burst out his full strength. Han Fei had already heard that the bones of the corpse puppet were broken in more than one place. Many parts of its flesh were also smashed by himself. Its whole state was like a pile of human-shaped rotten meat. However, after 10 minutes, Han Fei's face changed drastically. His power of the great path. Time was up, and he couldn't hold on any longer. Taking advantage of this last opportunity, Han Fei retreated quickly, and a series of arrays appeared under his feet. Beep, beep, beep. One array after another quickly condensed. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of arrays condensed and enveloped Han Fei. Whoosh! Han Fei set up arrays one after another and launched another round of attacks without taking a breath. He planned to consume this corpse puppet's energy until he could use the power of the great path again. However, the next moment, Han Fei was shocked. The corpse slowly crawled to its feet. Endless black mist, energy, and spiritual energy surged into its body from all directions. Ka ka ka. Clatter, clatter, with a series of crackling sounds, the corpse puppet's body rapidly recovered. Seeing this scene, Han Fei's blood froze. His attack had failed to kill his opponent, and he had ended up like this. Once the corpse puppet was able to hold on until the end of his eruption, he would be able to use the power of the corpse nurturing ground to quickly recover his strength. At the end of the day, the corpse's physical body was too strong. Otherwise, he would have perished under Han Fei's bombardment. When the corpse puppet recovered, Han Fei had set up 3,000 arrays, including defensive arrays, maze arrays, and killing arrays. The corpse puppet swallowed a large amount of energy in one gulp and said furiously, "Human, you've angered me." At this point, Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. "Sooner or later, I'll beat you to a pulp." Watching the corpse puppet rush into the arrays and explode one array after another, Han Fei took a deep breath. After waiting for 2 minutes, he saw that the corpse puppet had only destroyed 1/3 of the arrays. Only then did Han Fei smile, and with a thought, he disappeared on the spot. Based on the recovery time in Forge the Universe, it would only take about a day in the outside world before he could come out and fight again. On average, it would take Han Fei less than an hour to recover to his full state. As soon as he entered Forge the Universe, Han Fei was speechless. "Old Yuan, if you can cultivate a corpse puppet to be so strong with time, doesn't that mean that with enough time, most people can become this strong?" The old tortoise said, "Do you still remember what I told you back then? Some of the old bastards use the method of raising corpses to cultivate a stronger body so that they can easily possess it or reincarnate it. However, it's not what you said. Except for some races, the lifespan of venerables is limited. In such a limited period of time, how many people could cultivate to such a level? Besides, it's hard to find a place to cultivate corpses. Even if there is a place to cultivate corpses, thousands of years may not be enough to cultivate a strong corpse puppet. But the one you met now has been here for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. Shouldn't he be very strong?" Han Fei curled his lips. "His body is indeed very strong. Just now, I felt that my skin and flesh had been tempered. It seemed that this kind of head-on beating, in addition to the powerful recovery ability of my physical body, had strengthened my flesh and blood. It might be that the accumulated energy was slowly being absorbed by my physical body. This feeling was not obvious before I met my opponent. Now, this kind of hand-to-hand combat is a good opportunity to temper my body, but I don't know how much can I temper." The old turtle said, "The energy you accumulated in the early stage has indeed not been fully digested by your flesh and blood. But I estimate that it can help you improve by 10% to 20% at most. That should be the limit." Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and said, "It's okay. It's hard to improve by 10% now." When Han Fei appeared for the second time, he quickly adjusted his fighting style. Han Fei used the Great Path of Time as a backup and first fought with this corpse in terms of strength and physique. Fighting with his body, he had to beat the enemy as well as be beaten. The recovery power and strength of Han Fei's flesh and blood were extraordinary. Although he hadn't made a breakthrough in these two aspects, his strength had also greatly increased. To be honest, this was to tap his potential. In every realm, he had to tap his potential to the limit. That way, every time he broke through, he would obtain the greatest improvement. The corpse thought that Han Fei had escaped, but who knew that Han Fei would appear again? This made him furious. After all, he was just a corpse puppet. Although he had learned the human language and some information from the outside world from humans, a corpse puppet was still a corpse puppet. However, corpse puppets were still corpse puppets. They were easily irritable. Han Fei shouted, "Come on, let's fight for another 3,000 rounds. Bam! Bam! Bam!" This time, Han Fei didn't even use his power of the Great Path and fought with the corpse puppet with his most basic strength. As a result, Han Fei's comprehensive strength was several times weaker than that of the corpse puppet. As a result, with a series of bangs, Han Fei was beaten up by the corpse puppet. The corpse puppet was surprised. "Your strength has weakened. It seems that your so-called Great Path can't be used again." Han Fei didn't answer. The reason why he was beaten up was that he wanted to tap his body's potential through the corpse puppet's critical strikes. Of course, this was only one of the reasons. On the other hand, the corpse puppet had consumed so much energy that it would be his turn later. After being bombarded for more than 300 minutes in a row, the corpse breeding ground had been beaten into ruins. The corpse puppet was shocked. Why is this guy's physique stronger than mine? He had felt Han Fei's strength. When Han Fei broke out with all his strength was so terrifying that he was unable to fight back for a time and could only let Han Fei bombard and beat him. Fortunately, this corpse breeding ground could constantly provide him with strength. Therefore, as long as he was in this corpse breeding ground, he was almost immortal. But now, it was his turn to attack with all his strength. After more than 300 minutes, he still couldn't beat this person to the point of collapse. Why was this happening? Han Fei, on the other hand, was chatting with the old turtle. Old Yuan, I think the Nine-Palace ruler of Providence might be inaccurate sometimes. Although the corpse is indeed powerful, it's not as inauspicious as it looks. Because it can't kill me at all. If it were me, I would give it a bad evaluation at most. And the old turtle said, this is not bad. Why don't you let it out and have a look? Han Fei rolled his eyes. Let it out. Is there something wrong with my head? How can I let this thing out? Wouldn't that bring chaos to the world? Who the hell are you? Since I can't kill you, why don't you attack me? Han Fei sneered. It's none of your business. Why don't you do it and let me do it? At this moment, Han Fei's face was bruised and swollen, but he was still extremely arrogant. After half an hour, the power of this corpse was exhausted. With a thought, Han Fei activated the invincible Great Path, punched out a golden light fist mark, and blasted at the corpse puppet with overwhelming power. If the corpse puppet had a complex heart like human beings, it would have collapsed at this time. When I hit you, you didn't fight back. Now that my power has weakened, you start to fight back. Are you a masochist? The two of them bombarded each other again. Half an hour later, Han Fei's flesh and blood had been slapped hundreds of thousands of times by the corpse puppet. At this time, Han Fei attacked with all his strength and blasted the corpse puppet back. Then, he set up an array and entered Forge the Universe again. Seeing Han Fei leave, the corpse puppet let out a long sigh of relief, thinking, this guy is finally gone. I just hope he won't come again. Even if he was just a corpse, he seemed to feel tired. However, only half an hour later, the void shook, and Han Fei reappeared in the corpse nurturing land, the corpse puppet, 1 day. 3 days. Half a month. Yes, it only took half a month. Except for the time when Han Fei entered Forge the Universe to recuperate, the corpse had been fighting. The corpse also found that Han Fei seemed to have never left but just hid in a place that he couldn't find. In the past half a month, no matter how stupid the corpse was, he knew that Han Fei regarded him as a sparring partner. However, he had to fight because he couldn't give Han Fei a chance. Once he gave Han Fei a chance, under Han Fei's violent bombardment, he might be directly killed. On this day, Han Fei appeared again, and the corpse puppet was already waiting in place, not even having the desire to sneak attack. However, this time was different from the past. Han Fei said, 20%. Because of you, the strength of my flesh and blood has increased by a full 20%. It's a pity that this is all you can do with your strength. Now, I can only helplessly send you on your way. The corpse puppet shouted, human, if I don't die, I will tear you into pieces one day. Han Fei sneered. You will definitely die. This time, Han Fei still didn't use the power of the Great Path. He jumped forward and fought with the corpse for more than 300 minutes. When he was beaten to pieces, a holy beam of light descended. At that moment, Han Fei quickly recovered to his peak, stepped on the ground, and with the power of the Great Path, a terrifying aura emerged spontaneously. And around Han Fei, the ancient desolate war body broke out. Bam! 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 This time, Han Fei's strength was slightly improved than before, but not by much. The corpse roared, "You can't kill me. Your realm is not high enough." But at the next moment, blue light flowed in Han Fei's hand. The corpse puppet found that its strength was melting under this strange force. Every time it fought with Han Fei, its body seemed to be collapsing. Huh! Han Fei jumped up and attacked with all his strength for 100 minutes in a row. The bombardment was so fierce that even outside the steps into the sea, the area within 10,000 kilometers was shaking. When the corpse puppet couldn't fight back, Han Fei used the Great Path of Time to circle the surrounding space. Han Fei activated the 100 Beast Soul Devouring Roar, the Heaven-Knocking Gate and the Heavenly God Spike. Although a massive amount of energy tried to pour into the corpse's body, under Han Fei's time barrier, the speed was much slower. At this time, the void lines had already appeared, and the Monkey King 3,000 strikes were launched. After 1,000 strikes, although the corpse's body didn't completely disintegrate, its soul had almost been obliterated by Han Fei. However, just when Han Fei wanted to kill the corpse puppet directly, suddenly, he heard the dry voice of the Emperor Sparrow in his mind. "I'm going out." Second. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1647. Ever since the Emperor Sparrow grew up a little, it had been lazy but proud. In Forge the Universe, the Emperor Sparrow liked to stay with Little Black and Little White, but it didn't like the nine-tailed mantis shrimp. This was the first time the Emperor Sparrow had taken the initiative to look for him. Tututa Han Fei shielded the energy and spiritual energy around the corpse puppet before releasing the Emperor Sparrow with a thought. Han Fei had always felt that the Emperor Sparrow didn't like him, he didn't know if it was his illusion. The moment the Emperor Sparrow came out, it raised its head and exclaimed at the sky. Whoop! As soon as the Emperor Sparrow spread its wings, the murderous aura in this space surged and crazily drilled into the Emperor Sparrow's body. The scene seemed to be centered on the Emperor Sparrow, and blood streaks were floating in the sky. In his heart, the old turtle said, "The Emperor Sparrow is a great ferocious beast. This kind of fiendish bloodland can definitely temper the body, refine the body, and accelerate its growth." Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei understood. The power here seemed to be its exclusive food. When the corpse puppet was here, the Emperor Sparrow was only a peak-level hidden fisher, so it naturally wouldn't come out. But at this moment, the corpse puppet had been crippled by Han Fei and barely looked human. So, the Emperor Sparrow proudly came out to eat. Han Fei remembered that the Emperor Sparrow had been stuck in this level for a long time. Earlier, Han Fei wondered if the Emperor Sparrow had grown too fast before. As a result, it was stuck in the peak-level hidden fissure and needed time to digest. Now, the Emperor Sparrow seemed to have met its favorite food. Would it cause the Emperor Sparrow to evolve? However, only half an hour later, he heard a crack, and the Emperor Sparrow made a breakthrough again. Han Fei wasn't surprised to see that. The Emperor Sparrow grew much faster than all his contractual spiritual beasts, even Little Black and Little White. However, the Emperor Sparrow's breakthrough was not over. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, there was another cracking sound. Half an hour later, there was another "kacha" sound. 2 hours later, there was another fucking crack. Then, 4 hours passed, 6 hours, half a day. During this period, Han Fei had been watching this place, and the more he observed, the more shocked he was. The arch sparrow's growth was simply too freaking abnormal. It was as if breaking through didn't cost anything. In just 9 short days, he broke through 9 levels and reached level 69. However, Han Fei didn't see any abilities of the Emperor Sparrow until he reached level 69. It seemed that this guy only cared about levels. On the 10th day, Han Fei sensed that the Emperor Sparrow was getting more and more intimidating. In fact, it was so thick that it was about to erupt. Only a cracking sound could be heard. Han Fei suspected that the Emperor Sparrow was going to become an explorer without going through a tribulation, just like Little Black and Little White. At this moment, a giant boulder suddenly cracked 1,000 miles away. Crack, crack, crack! Han Fei came here in a few steps and found that this was not a boulder at all. Even the small mountain under the boulder had cracked apart, the baleful aura here was even denser. A large number of red threads spread out from the cracks. Boom! In less than 100 breaths' time, the small mountain collapsed into pieces. Only then did Han Fei discover, to his shock, that the mountain was hollow. Below the mountain was a pitch-black cave, just like the big cave in the Hengduan mountain range. Han Fei saw a large number of baleful aura threads flowing out of the cave, and spirit awakening fluid was slowly overflowing from here. Han Fei could also feel that there was a deep fear in it. Han Fei immediately took out the 9-palace ruler of providence and measured it casually. Without even turning it twice, the ruler mark fell on the desperate situation lot. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. That was too unbelievable. Faced with such a level of exploration, Han Fei didn't dare to rush in recklessly. Although he had experienced the desperate situation lot twice and didn't die, it didn't mean that the desperate situation lot wasn't strong. On the contrary, Han Fei narrowly escaped death every time. Even Han Fei almost lost his life when he was forced to change his contract. This time, Han Fei naturally wouldn't rush in recklessly when he encountered the desperate situation lot again. The old turtle said, "I can't feel what's down there either." However, even this king's heart palpitates from the pressure it exudes. You'd better not wander into this place. You don't have to go into these places now. Han Fei nodded slightly. Now that he had taken over the 1,000-star city, he had a clear plan to become a king. In his estimation, it might not be very difficult, so there was no need for him to focus on the desperate situation lot at this moment. When Han Fei decided not to go into this cave, he heard the Emperor Sparrow let out a long cry. Then, Han Fei heard the Emperor Sparrow say, "I want to eat this man's soul." Han Fei's heart trembled. Damn it, can you eat it directly? That guy is a fake king. Swish. Han Fei stepped back, only to see that the Emperor Sparrow seemed to have woken up from the breakthrough. Han Fei was lost for words. Are you sure you can eat the soul of a fake king? The Emperor Sparrow said, "Can't I eat it if you completely kill him?" Han Fei, fine, the Emperor Sparrow was begging him. After all, it was his bird. Han Fei muttered in his heart, "This is my bird. I can't be angry. Don't lower yourself to its level." The corpse puppet, which had been sealed by Han Fei, was still half dead because of the exhaustion of its energy. Neither its body nor the power of its soul had recovered. After all, Han Fei had trapped it firmly with an array. It couldn't mobilize the surrounding power even if it wanted to. Han Fei entered the array and bombarded it wildly. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, the corpse puppet was finally crushed to death. Boom! Outside, the great Dao cracked. It was so sudden that people were caught off guard. On the ghost ship, Li Daxian's face changed, and he looked at Han Guanshu. And Han Guanshu was calculating with his fingers. Then he smiled slightly. It's done. It seems that the corpse puppet has been raised for too long. It took me almost several months to completely kill it. Li Daxian squinted at Han Guanshu. Is this what a human being is saying? He's just showing off his son. Damn it, why didn't I have a son back then? However, although Han Guanshu and the others knew it, the people on the Scattered Stars Island, the 36 towns, and the 1,000-star city didn't know what had happened. After all, this corpse puppet had cultivated its own consciousness. In terms of strength, it had reached the level of a pseudo-king. It was even much stronger than the average pseudo-king. His death wasn't any smaller than the death of old Monster Chu. On the Scattered Stars Island, the 1,000-star city, and the 36 towns, countless people looked up at the sky, dumbfounded. Someone exclaimed, "Why did another venerable die? Who is it this time?" Someone was surprised. The death of a venerable must have something to do with Marshal Han. Where did he go this time? Someone sighed. Marshal Han is indeed a fierce god. He killed a venerable as if he was playing a game. From the cracks on the Great Dao, it can be seen that the one who died was definitely not an ordinary person. None of these people thought that the one who died would be Han Fei. After all, the power that Han Fei showed was too strong. One person had picked 1,000-star city. Did you think this person would die? They wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. Han Fei also knew that he had to go out as soon as possible. Otherwise, some people would really think that he had died. Some of the big families that were trying to restore their power didn't have such expectations. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his power of will began to grow significantly again. Han Fei couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Why is it giving me so much power of will when I can't even see myself? And the Emperor Sparrow opened its mouth, which was like a vortex, absorbing a large amount of murderous energy and some souls that should have dissipated into its body. Han Fei saw that the Emperor Sparrow's body was slowly expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Every feather on its body was shining brightly. It wasn't until it bulged into a big fat bird like a ball that Han Fei realized how similar the Emperor Sparrow was to himself in the past. The power that its body could bear had reached the limit. And it was stuck in its cultivation realm. It was clearly going to make a breakthrough. Han Fei immediately said, "Let's enter Forge the Universe first. I'll take you out for the tribulation." Han Fei confirmed that the Emperor Sparrow was different from Little Black and Little White. It needed to go through a tribulation. This time, the Emperor Sparrow didn't refuse. With a swish, it flew into the center of Han Fei's eyebrows. Han Fei glanced at the almost crushed body of the corpse puppet, grabbed it, and threw it into Forge the Universe. With a thought, Han Fei left the corpse nurturing ground. Appearing in the 1,000-star proving ground, Han Fei found that there were more people around him. However, Han Fei had no time to care about that. With a flash, his figure disappeared. In a moment, he appeared in front of the God's Memorial Tower. This time, Han Fei already knew the way to the central holy city without the nautical panorama. So, Han Fei's action this time is extremely fast. In less than half an hour, Han Fei reappeared in the central holy city. When the God's Memorial Tower shook, Han Fei saw Ren Tianfei following him as soon as he appeared. He said leisurely, "I thought you would have a lot of things to do. Who was the one who died just now? Why are you here now?" However, a white light flashed between Han Fei's eyebrows, and the Emperor Sparrow spread its wings. In the next moment, the sky changed colors. The surging heavenly tribulation stretched for more than 3,000 kilometers, which was much more powerful than the minor heavenly tribulation that Han Fei experienced. Ren Tianfei was surprised, but he didn't speak. Obviously, Han Fei came in a hurry for his spiritual beast's heavenly tribulation. When Ren Tianfei saw the Emperor Sparrow, his eyes narrowed slightly and he realized something, and Han Fei looked at Ren Tianfei and said, "Just pretend that you've never seen it." Ren Tianfei nodded. Okay. The third update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1648. Little Black and Little White hadn't transcended their tribulations, but the Arch Sparrow seemed to be a little different. It became the first of all Han Fei's naturally endowed spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts to pass the tribulation. Thunder rumbled in the sky. This was clearly no ordinary heavenly lightning, as an abnormal blood-red color had appeared in the sky. It was different from the purple he had been in before. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, what kind of heavenly tribulation does this color represent?" The old turtle paused for a moment and said, "The blood-colored heavenly tribulation is indeed the Emperor Sparrow. This is the 6-9 Emperor Tribulation." Han Fei said in surprise, 6-9 Emperor Tribulation. The old turtle said, "Different races and different creatures may be born with different lightning tribulations. Passing an explorer's heavenly tribulation was called a minor heavenly tribulation. There were 3, 4, and 6 minor heavenly tribulations. Currently, I know that the strongest heavenly tribulation in the explorer realm is the 6-9 Emperor Tribulation. All those who overcome this tribulation are peerless great vicious beings with boundless potential. Of course, the difficulty is also greater." Han Fei's face slightly changed. 6 heavenly tribulations? Han Fei's face changed greatly. Back then, he had only had 4 heavenly tribulations, but he was already smashed beyond recognition. However, the Emperor Sparrow had summoned 6 heavenly tribulations right off the bat. Han Fei threw a sun-moon shell to it without hesitation and said, "Monarch Sparrow, there are countless resources here and the skeleton of a king. It will definitely support you to complete the tribulation." The Emperor Sparrow grabbed Han Fei's sun-moon shell with its claws without hesitation, raised its head to the sky, and squeaked. At this time, the entire 1,000-star city was shocked. Countless people were attracted by the terrifying heavenly tribulation, especially the outer area of the 3 sacred lands, which was crowded with spectators. Someone exclaimed, "Sacred city. Someone is undergoing tribulation in the central sacred city." Someone exclaimed in shock, "How is that possible?" In the entire history of the 1,000-star city, no one had ever reached the central holy city. Who was this person? How did he get there? Fuck. In his lifetime, he had actually seen a change in the central holy city. Could it be that the central holy city is about to open? Someone said suspiciously, "Just a moment ago, an expert died." At this moment, someone is crossing over. Do you think it's Marshal Han? Many people heard this and thought, maybe it's true. Someone said directly, "Of course." The recent major events were all caused by Marshal Han. Marshal Han could even wipe out the great clans. I'm going through a tribulation inside, what's wrong with that? Not to mention ordinary people, even the 7 major sects and even Old Bai and Old Jiang on the Pure Sun Island were dumbfounded. Fuck, is Han Fei really transcending a tribulation? They knew that although Han Fei was extremely strong, he shouldn't have reached that level yet. However, no matter what happened to Han Fei, it was hard to say. The problem this time was in the central holy city. Except for a few people, no one knew what was there. Old Bai said, "I'll go to the level 3 fishery and ask Ancestral Patriarch. You stay here and take a look." On the Pure Sun Island, the large group of students could finally calm down. The door-carrying marshal, Bai Lu, Chu Linyuan, Mu Qingchuan, Xiao Zhan, Wen Renyu, Chu Jinan, Ling Yuan, Su Daiji, Shiyan, and others had already boarded fishing boats and flew towards the 3 holy lands. These people were all agitated. Wang Dashui shivered and said, "Junior brother, is he really going to become a king?" Bai Lu said enviously, "Junior brother Han Fei, I knew he was extraordinary. I didn't expect him to be so extraordinary. I'm afraid his strength has exceeded our imagination." Xiao Zhan and Wen Renyu looked at each other. They had just become explorers. Once, when they taught Han Fei was just a little boy. When they first met, Han Fei was almost 2 heads shorter than Xiao Zhan. But now, only a few years had passed. This kid was going to transcend a king's tribulation. This was really unbelievable to the 2 of them. Chu Jinan sighed. No wonder he is senior brother Han Fei. We really can't catch up with his growth speed. Ling Yuan looked back at Yi Shiyan and the others. We have to work hard. If we don't work hard, we will be defeated. And Yi Shiyan and Su Daiji had already been chatting together. Yi Shiyan screamed, "If I have a king's senior brother, who dares to bully me in the future? Those who bullied our Yi family in the past. I'll beat them up one by one. I'll kick down their doors and take their resources." Su Daiji said, "The big families have been destroyed by senior brother." Yi Shiyan was stunned for a while. That's true. Then who should I bully? Everyone, while they were discussing in the outside world, the first heavenly tribulation had arrived. Boom! The crimson lightning was extremely glamorous. Even the sky was dyed crimson. It was as if the sun was shining brightly for tens of thousands of miles. It was a spectacular sight. Han Fei was wondering if the next few heavenly tribulations of the Emperor Sparrow would be very difficult. At this moment, Han Fei saw the Emperor Sparrow spread its wings and its body was more than 30 meters long. The Emperor Sparrow opened its big mouth and swallowed lightning bolts. The Emperor Sparrow was like a body that was generating electricity. countless arcs of lightning drilled into its body before bursting out. The terrifying lightning of the heavenly tribulation was completely swallowed by the Emperor Sparrow. Shoot! Han Fei was stunned. Although the first heavenly tribulation wasn't very strong. It shouldn't be like this, right? Swallowing lightning with its mouth. As if nothing had happened. The Emperor Sparrow swayed its body and shook its feathers as if it was stretching its body. The second heavenly tribulation. The Emperor Sparrow continued swallowing lightning. The third heavenly tribulation. It was still swallowing. Han Fei was dumbfounded. When the fourth heavenly tribulation came, the Emperor Sparrow only swallowed half of the lightning when its feathers exploded. Thousands of feathers exploded, but its body didn't retreat even half an inch. It rose up and cried at the sky. At this moment, the Emperor Sparrow still didn't use Han Fei's sun-moon shell. Its feathers quickly recovered under the repair of the power of the heavenly tribulation. The fifth heavenly tribulation was still crimson, like a pillar of blood. Bam! 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 At this moment, thousands of feathers on the Emperor Sparrow's body flew and interweaved like clothes, blocking the heavenly tribulation. At the same time, its pupils glowed, and its mouth swallowed the heavenly tribulation. This time, he actually withstood it again. Yes, it survived the heavenly tribulation. Everyone, including Han Fei and the old turtle, fell into infinite shock at this time. The old turtle had only heard of the Emperor Sparrow, but he had never seen it before. Damn! Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he was shocked. The 6-9 Emperor tribulations hadn't been used yet, but it had passed 5 heavenly tribulations. Han Fei was the most surprised. At this moment, he believed what the old turtle said. Different races had their own talents. Obviously, the talent of the Emperor Sparrow was far beyond the understanding of ordinary creatures. Maybe it wasn't difficult for the Emperor Sparrow to pass the heavenly tribulation. Of course, apart from talent, Han Fei also saw the Emperor Sparrow's arrogance. That kind of arrogance was a kind of arrogance that didn't fear the heavens. After 5 heavenly tribulations, the Emperor Sparrow didn't retreat at all. It even flew dozens of meters higher into the sky. Han Fei still remembered that when he took on the King tribulations, he fell to the bottom of the sea again and again. God knew how many times he had fallen. He even forgot it. At this moment, the arrogance in Han Fei's heart swelled too. Han Fei thought to himself, even my spiritual beast is so arrogant. Facing the heavenly tribulation, it's fearless and doesn't retreat at all. Why didn't I deduce a technique? Huff! Han Fei's body suddenly trembled. As its master, how could he lose to the Emperor Sparrow in terms of momentum? Seeing that Han Fei was so excited, the old turtle couldn't help but ask, wait. What are you going to do? Han Fei pondered and said, I'm going to borrow the tribulation cloud when the Emperor Sparrow is about to finish its heavenly tribulation. The old turtle was dumbfounded. The Emperor Sparrow is about to finish its heavenly tribulation. What else can you do? And Ren Tianfei, who was not far away, was already shocked. If he was right, this was just a minor heavenly tribulation. A minor heavenly tribulation had 5 heavenly tribulations. Wasn't it over? Was this Emperor tribulation? Gudu. Ren Tianfei swallowed. After thousands of years, someone finally rose in the yin-yang heaven. Boom! At the moment when the 6th heavenly tribulation appeared, with a shriek, the Emperor Sparrow spread its wings and soared into the sky. Behind the Emperor Sparrow, spiritual energy followed, and thousands of spiritual fruits were crumbling and drilling into its body. A carp leaping over the dragon gate was a wonder. But now, the Emperor Sparrow was soaring into the heavenly tribulation. Han Fei didn't even know how to describe it. He could only describe it in one word. Yeah, in the sky, a charred, bloody, but extremely handsome bird flew back. Bam! As soon as it landed, the Emperor Sparrow threw the sun-moon shell to Han Fei and said proudly, I'll use a little of yours. Han Fei asked, do you want a healing technique? The Emperor Sparrow tilted its head and looked at Han Fei. What do you think? Han Fei knew that although the Emperor Sparrow's body was going through terrifying changes, it was definitely weak at this moment. So, a heavenly awakening divine technique descended and enveloped the Emperor Sparrow. When Han Fei looked at the Emperor Sparrow's information again, he was shocked. Did this guy use a skill? Information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name Emperor Sparrow. Introduction. This is a mysterious creature from ancient times, regarded as ominous by all races. The Emperor Sparrow was born to be an emperor and looked down upon both ancient and modern times. Among the tens of thousands of ancient ferocious beasts, the Emperor Sparrow was the most powerful one. Level S70 Equality A mysterious great path Invincible storage of chaotic aura 1 wispy food depends on your mood Battle techniques Eye of Disaster Inner demon summoning Innate fiend battle body Note Follow the Emperor's heart, or disasters will befall you. Note 2 It said that whoever kills the Emperor Sparrow will die. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1649. What kind of creature could cross an entire major realm with a single breakthrough? Han Fei had never heard of it before. The Emperor Sparrow was a peak-level hidden fisher, but as soon as he moved, he transcended the tribulation and became an explorer. The heart demon summoning and the innate fiendish combat body were the two great battle skills that the Emperor Sparrow had obtained this time. Inner demon summoning, as the name suggested, was a skill to summon inner demons. When fighting against an enemy, it was easy to imagine what would happen if one succeeded in causing them to fall into their inner demons. The innate fiend battle body was not hard to understand. The Emperor Sparrow was a ferocious beast from the great desolate times. It had devoured the evil aura in the corpse-nurturing ground. It seemed that it had eaten its fill and awakened a battle physique technique of its own, which was somewhat similar to the ancient desolate battle physique. At this moment, DK returned with his head held high like a victorious general. Although its entire body was damaged, its aura and posture were awe-inspiring. Han Fei didn't intend to test the Emperor Sparrow's ability right now. Ren Tianfen was still nearby, so Han Fei used the apocalyptic divine technique to recall the Emperor Sparrow back to forge the universe. Ren Tianfei was about to speak, when Han Fei shook his finger, hinting him to keep quiet. Han Fei stepped into the place where the vermilion bird had gone through the tribulation and sat down cross-legged. Ren Tianfei was dumbfounded. What are you doing? Others are undergoing tribulation, what are you doing? Was he going to break through to the peak of the venerable realm? Ren Tianfei was speechless. Has he broken through to the peak of the venerable realm? That was way too fast, wasn't it? What Ren Tianfei didn't know was that as soon as Han Fei sat cross-legged, he had an idea. Deduce. Buzz, and this deduction, to Han Fei's surprise, didn't consume any spiritual spring. For a long time, Han Fei seemed to have been used to deducing with the spiritual spring and forgot that the void fishing art had reached the king level. So, when 100 wisps of chaotic energy were withdrawn from Han Fei's body, the old turtle rolled his eyes. This was a prodigal, a real prodigal. However, at the moment when Han Fei was deducing, an even more terrifying heavenly power came. Hula, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 1,000-star city was hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide, and the sky was shaking. That wasn't the end. In the 36 towns, the scattered stars island, and almost one-third of the yin-yang heaven, wind and clouds gathered and heavy rain fell. Boom, 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 in the 1,000-star city, above the central holy city, lightning zigzagged like dragons, moving between the clouds. The entire 1,000-star city was shrouded in dark clouds, and almost everyone was looking up at this shocking scene. Someone exclaimed, "There are already 6 heavenly tribulations. This must be the king's tribulation. Otherwise, why would there be 6 heavenly tribulations?" Someone said in shock, "I heard that the king's tribulation is the 6 paths." Then, why does it seem like there are more and more lightning bolts in the sky? On the Thug Academy side, Yi Xian exclaimed, "Senior brother Han Fei, it seems that he's really going to transcend the king tribulation. Oh my god. I'm going to have a king-level senior brother soon." The others didn't say anything. They just felt that it was a little surreal. Especially Chu Jinnan and the others. Han Fei didn't enter the Thug Academy much earlier than them. Why was the gap so big? Chu Linyuan said leisurely, it seems that our Thug Academy has accepted the strongest genius in history. The level 3 fishery. Li Daxian looked at Han Guanqiu. Who is transcending the tribulation? This is clearly the king's tribulation. Don't tell me you don't know. However, Han Guanqiu frowned slightly and pondered for a long time. This is definitely not the king's tribulation. It's impossible for him to transcend the king's tribulation now. Let's wait and see. Central Holy City. At this time, Han Fei was fully prepared. The resources that he had obtained from the Zhang clan were simply too much to be counted. He didn't take much. He just took a random sea-swallowing seashell. The resources here made Han Fei feel that they were enough for him to cultivate until he became a demi-king. Boom! When a blue lightning arc descended, Han Fei was wrapped in lightning. His body shook, and the lightning moistened his flesh and blood. Han Fei even opened his mouth and swallowed. Whoop! With this inhalation, Han Fei's internal organs were burning, his blood was boiling, and the invincible will covered his whole body. Han Fei's body, which was already cracked a little, cracked even more in some places. Golden blood was flowing out, but it was not burnt. Huff! After swallowing, Han Fei took this bolt of lightning to temper his body. Boom boom! However, deducing the void fishing art was completely different from transcending a tribulation. The thunder tribulations came one after another, and the void fishing art came one after another. As soon as the first bolt of lightning struck down, the second bolt of lightning followed, and there was no gap at all. Based on Han Fei's experience, such lightning would last for half an hour to an hour. Han Fei estimated that directly deducing the void fishing art could improve the tempering of his body by at least 30%. The old turtle had never seen Han Fei deducing the void fishing art. And the last time Han Fei deduced it was in the Age of Doom. Now, under the bombardment of more than 30 bolts of lightning in a row, even though Han Fei's physique was extremely strong, his body still cracked under the bombardment of this high-density lightning. At this time, Han Fei's physique was already strong enough, and his recovery ability was extremely fast. Han Fei grabbed a huge amount of flexible and spiritual spring water from the Sun Moon shell, which was basically enough to keep his body from collapsing. This time, the deduction was a little easier than Han Fei expected. The 7th level of the void fishing art corresponded to the Pioneer Sea realm. However, the power of lightning was not as exaggerated as transcending a king's tribulation. On the one hand, this was a kind of cultivation after all. On the other hand, it might be that Han Fei's physical strength was indeed a little too strong. After 100 bolts of lightning bombardment in a row, the old turtle was dumbfounded, so was Ren Tianfei, and countless people outside the Thousand-Star City. Not far from the God's Memorial Tower, Luo Xiaobai and the other two were standing in the void. Zhang Xuanyu said in shock, "Is there something wrong with this heavenly tribulation? How many bolts have there been? Hundreds of them. Is there no end to them?" Lu Rinquang nodded quickly. Who can withstand the bombardment of so many heavenly tribulations? However, Luo Xiaobai frowned slightly and said, "No. The first 6 may be heavenly tribulations. But the last 100 are definitely not heavenly tribulations. It's a bit like..." Suddenly, Luo Xiaobai said, "Do you remember? When I was in school in the Blue Sea town, there was a rainy day, and Han Fei was alone in the back mountain. At that time, bolts of lightning fell one after another. Every once in a while, there would be one. We were curious about it." Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Rinquang looked at each other, and then both gasped. Did Han Fei start to transcend the tribulation? Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes and said, "Maybe it's not a tribulation, but a kind of cultivation technique. To practice this technique, one needs to be struck by lightning." The fat on Lu Rinquang's face shook and he said, "Even if it's a cultivation technique, ordinary people can't bear being struck by lightning all the time, can they? After all, there are countless bolts of lightning." Zhang Xuanyu narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems that he has to work harder than we thought." Luo Xiaobai was speechless. When have you ever seen him not working hard? Half an hour later, Han Fei had consumed no less than 50,000 spiritual fruits and no less than 1,000,000 kilograms of spiritual spring. And his body, every time it collapsed and reassembled, it was getting stronger. And it was getting stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, there were only slight cracks left on Han Fei's body. These cracks were very tight, which meant that Han Fei's flesh and blood were almost comparable to his bones. Even if it was still a little bit short, the lightning was not over. However, at this time, the frequency of the lightning bombardment was also decreasing, and a lot. After an hour. After Han Fei was bombarded by the last bolt of lightning, the cracks on his body almost disappeared. In the end, the scabs on Han Fei's body surface collapsed. Han Fei suddenly got up. Sure enough, it was still a little short. Now he was still not in the most perfect state. And the old turtle had long been shocked. At this moment, when the lightning completely disappeared, he sighed and said, "Did you exchange with the calabash again? Why was it able to attract lightning? Since it can attract lightning, why not strike for a while longer? If you persist for a while longer, your body will be perfect. At that time, your flesh, bones, and soul will merge into one, and you will break through to the peak stage of the venerable realm." Han Fei curled his lips. "Do you think I can exchange with you just because I said so? Forget it, I'm still a little short, but I'm not in a hurry. Just give me some time to slowly repair it. By the way, I'll go and see the other 9-star beads." Han Fei thought to himself, "I've just seen the 3 9-star beads of the Chu sect and I've already gained so many benefits. Then will there be opportunities for the remaining 6? Of course, after responding to the old turtle, Han Fei had already looked at the 7th level of the void fishing art. Existing art of void fishing, 7th layer, void descent. Note, the first universal art in ancient times, written by the ancient 9 king-level masters. When the book was completed, heaven and earth cried, and the waves of anger surged into the sky. It is the supreme of all arts. Void arrival. Han Fei didn't understand for a while. This didn't seem to have anything to do with fishing-related arts. When Han Fei glanced at the art named Void Arrival in his mind, he immediately took a breath. Shoot! For a moment, Han Fei was a little dumbfounded. Is this an art or a combat skill? The so-called Void Arrival, to put it bluntly, was like blowing out tens of thousands of clones with a tuft of hair. In other words, this descent spell was a freaking doppelganger spell. Besides, this Void Arrival was different from ordinary clones. He could create clones of different levels according to his own strength. The lower the cultivation level, the stronger the clones would be. In addition, the Void Descent technique had an unimaginable ability. As long as he didn't take the initiative to withdraw the clone, then the clone could always exist, just like an external incarnation. Of course, compared with the real external incarnation, the clone couldn't cultivate, and their strength was fixed. However, if this clone was killed and the other party didn't obliterate his soul, then the soul could still remain in this world. When he was free one day, he could go and get it back. And these were just the characteristics of the clone of the Void Arrival. In addition, it had another additional ability. Within his field of vision, it could be projected everywhere, like a miracle. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1650. Deducing the void fishing art didn't make Han Fei's body reach a perfect state. However, the void descent that he acquired this time was truly a surprise. Although he hadn't used it yet, Han Fei was quite tempted by it. After Han Fei's cultivation ended, the clouds in the sky dissipated, but the rain didn't stop. At this point, Han Fei got up and cast a heavenly awakening divine technique on himself to restore himself to the most perfect state. At this point, Han Fei looked at Ren Tianfei and said, "There are too many people outside. I'll come in and cultivate in seclusion for a few days." Ren Tianfei really wanted to roll his eyes at Han Fei. Is this how you cultivate in seclusion? Ren Tianfei said, you've made such a big mess outside, and you're handing it all to a little girl? Han Fei grinned. I trust her. Ren Tianfei slightly shook his head. Do you have any ideas about the Eye of Heavenly Path? Han Fei slightly nodded. It's in my plan. However, it can't be very fast. After all, my strength hasn't reached its peak yet. If the problem of the Eye of Heavenly Path is solved, it may cause new trouble. Suddenly, Han Fei asked, Hey, Old Man Ren, you haven't cultivated the indestructible body to the peak, have you? It's the complete fusion of the soul, the flesh, and the bones. Ren Tianfei smiled. It seems that you've made it to this step. Of course it's not that simple. As far as I know, those who can cultivate the indestructible body all need great luck. The complete fusion of the flesh, the soul, and the bones. I should be able to do it soon. Once I master this technique, I'll be half a king, and my body will be as strong as that of a king. See, I'm nice to you, right? Han Fei curled his lips. Humph. A half-king is a half-king after all. Even if your body has reached the pioneer sea state, what about your soul? I thought I'd become a king immediately after I mastered the indestructible body. Ren Tianfei rolled his eyes. What do you think becoming a king is? The indestructible body only brings you infinitely close to becoming a king. Can you become a king? That's the tribulation. As long as you can survive it, you'll become a king when you master the indestructible body. Han Fei curled his lips. By the way, I'm going to cultivate in seclusion for a while. Ren Tianfei pointed at the central palace. You can go by yourself, but don't go to the divine palace. The energy there was mixed, but the heavenly Tao Dharma I was still there. If you go, you won't be able to do anything except fight. Han Fei nodded and stepped out, coming to the third floor of the central divine temple, which was also the place to the divine palace. As Ren Tianfen said, it was meaningless for him to cultivate in the divine palace now. Although a long period of cultivation could also increase one's strength. But that would take a lot of time. What he lacked the most now was time. As soon as Han Fei entered the third floor, he set up all kinds of barriers and entered Forge the Universe. Ever since he returned, there was one thing that had been delayed for a long time, and that was the use of will. After all, he had recently obtained a lot of power of will. It could be said that the entire yin-yang heaven was contributing wish power to him. The amount he had obtained in just a few days was more than the total amount he had obtained in the past few years. Besides, Yangming was almost at the peak of the Venerable One, so his spiritual qi disassembly rate couldn't possibly always remain stagnant, right? Therefore, at this moment, Han Fei sat cross-legged and entered the state of deduction again. 3 months later, when Han Fei consumed the last trace of power of will, the spiritual qi disassembly rate finally reached 88%. This time, the skyrocketing rate of disassembling spiritual energy made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. At the same time, Han Fei's heart became heavier and heavier. This was the power of will that everyone in the yin-yang heaven was providing for him. As a result, he consumed it all in a few days. And the spiritual qi disassembly rate only increased by 7%. This made him feel a little disappointed. Although people's admiration for him hadn't decreased much. After all, it wasn't as much power of will as when he swept the big clans. In the future, if he wanted to use the power of will again, he would need to accumulate more. Besides, after the spiritual qi disassembly rate was different, the power of will consumed for every bit of progress was obviously not the same as before. Therefore, he needed to accumulate more power of will. Han Fei sighed leisurely. It seems that there is still a long way to go before I become a king. Old Yuan, do you know what the person with the highest spiritual qi disassembly rate can achieve? The old turtle listened quietly to Han Fei's bragging. He said, generally speaking, 95% is about the same. It's extremely difficult to go any higher. As far as I know, some venerable sovereigns reached 98% of the success rate. This emperor feels that you should restrain your temper and spend 100 years polishing it. In this way, with your talent and confidence, I'm afraid it won't be a problem for you to reach 95%. Han Fei curled his lips. 100 years? Do you know how long that is? I have that time. I'm the strongest person below the king level. I'll search for treasures and opportunities everywhere. I don't believe I can't improve it by 98%. Han Fei got up from Forge the Universe and ended this seclusion. When Han Fei was about to leave, the Emperor Sparrow suddenly said, "Give me your bead. I'm going to that place last time to devour the evil chi." Han Fei was taken aback and asked in surprise, "You mean the corpse breeding ground?" The Emperor Sparrow nodded proudly. "That's a treasure land. Not only can I go there, but so can they." The Emperor Sparrow referred to the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others. He had all kinds of opportunities and grew so fast that the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others couldn't keep up with his pace. Other people's contractual spiritual beasts could cooperate with their masters. After all, they were all old monsters who had lived for thousands of years, and their contractual spiritual beasts had all grown up. However, the gap between his contractual spiritual beasts and his strength was getting wider and wider. This was not a solution. In fact, they had been in his Forge the Universe for 100 years and had already reached the peak of law enforcers. However, since he entered the cage, he basically had no time to consider their experience. At this moment, when the Emperor Sparrow mentioned it, Han Fei realized the problem himself. Han Fei immediately thought of something. Okay. Han Fei quickly made a decision. The corpse breeding ground was indeed a good place. There was endless evil chi and death chi there, and the density of energy and spiritual energy had reached a level that was unimaginable to the outside world. Before, because of the corpse puppet, even old Monster Chu couldn't gain anything from it. Now that the corpse puppet had been removed, except for the careless pothole, it was simply a perfect place for cultivation. Han Fei immediately nodded. When they finish their heavenly tribulations, they will all go to cultivate with you. Outside Forge the Universe. Han Fei walked out of the central temple, only to find that Ren Tianfei was repairing a house on a certain building, as if he had nothing better to do. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Old Ren. What are you doing here?" Ren Tianfen scoffed. "Ha! Are you blind? What else can I be doing except repairing houses?" Han Fei was speechless. "Wait. You are a top venerable. Why are you repairing houses here? By the way, why don't you go out?" Ren Tianfen sneered. "I am the controller of the yin-yang heaven. Everyone can go out, but I can't. Even if I go out, I can only go out occasionally. The central holy city can't be empty." Han Fei couldn't help but frown. "Old Ren, you seem quite stubborn." Han Fei suddenly remembered that there seemed to be someone alive in the yin-yang heaven. Suddenly, Han Fei said in surprise, "By the way, Old Ren, do you want me to find that little CI to accompany you?" Ren Tianfen stopped what he was doing and looked at Han Fei. "That girl Su Jusi. She can go back or not. However, her body has been dormant for too long. I'm afraid she has to cultivate reincarnation. Let her reincarnate. Keep her memory and live another life. Otherwise, she won't live long." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "You know that too?" Ren Tianfen curled his lips and smiled. "I know exactly when she left. At that time, she was only a peak-level junior venerable. After being sneak attacked by the Chu men, that body was basically destroyed. I kept her in a coffin for so long just to make it convenient for her to cultivate reincarnation." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "Do you know where she is?" Ren Tianfen looked at Han Fei and suddenly grinned. "I showed her the way." Later, the star bead she was in was obtained by the Thug Academy. How could I not know? Han Fei was speechless. There were really too many things that could be done at the Venerable Realm. He thought Su Jusi survived on her own. It turned out to be the result of Ren Tianfen's help. However, this person had to be saved. However, the strength of the reincarnated body was very low. Although their cultivation speed was extremely fast, he didn't have the time to take a burden with him, right? But no matter what, let her reincarnate. At least Old Man Ren could still watch her. When Han Fei left the central holy city and appeared in the thousand-star proving ground again, he found that there were thousands of people stationed here. According to the level of the star beads, Luo Xiaobai divided the thousand-star proving ground into grades. The number of people who entered each time was limited, but the thousand-star proving ground could absorb tens of thousands of people at a time. Because all the star beads owned by the big clans in the thousand-star city had been taken by Luo Xiaobai. So now, there were no independent star beads at all, except for Han Fei himself. On this square, if Han Fei wanted to open the star bead without permission, he would immediately be surrounded by people. After a while, Han Fei's face changed back to his original appearance. The strength of a peak-level advanced venerable was restrained, but the battle suit on his body was not. On the square of the thousand-star proving ground. Suddenly, someone exclaimed and pointed to the sky. "Look, General Han. Am I seeing things? Is that General Han?" Someone looked up and then shouted in shock, "It's General Han." "Yes, I remember what General Han looks like." Someone roared, "Do you need to remember?" Who wouldn't? Someone cursed, "I don't know which bastard told me that General Han might not be able to survive the King Tribulation. Look, didn't he? General Han, General Han, General Han, have you become a king?" The thousand-star proving ground suddenly boiled up because of Han Fei's arrival. Han Fei didn't answer these people's questions. He stood in the air and comforted them with his hands. "Everyone, don't disturb the order. In a few days, I will convey something. But now, there are some 9-star beads in the thousand-star proving ground. It's too dangerous inside, so I need to go in and sweep them. Only after I sweep them can I release these star beads without worry." Chapter 1651. Han Fei needed to give them an explanation. After all, the rules were set by him. If he violated them, he could go to whichever star bead he wanted. Although some people wouldn't say it, they would still feel that Han Fei's words were inconsistent with his actions. However, if he explained to these people, they wouldn't think that Han Fei was going to take anything for himself. They would only think that Han Fei was already so powerful, yet he still explained to them. This was a good image. Therefore, when Han Fei opened the 9-star bead, no one said anything and even specially gave Han Fei a piece of land. Han Fei then went to look at the Chao family's 9-star bead. However, as soon as he entered the first one, he found that there was no crisis here. The opportunities inside had obviously been taken by the Chao family. 3 in a row, and only the third one had a crisis. The axe light would descend from here, only God knows where the axe light came from. Anyway, it was here. Of course, this axe light had no effect on Han Fei now. After Han Fei finished searching, he guessed that the opportunities here should have been taken by the Chao family. However, it made sense. Except for the opportunities in the corpse breeding ground, the other 9-star beads weren't as difficult as he imagined. Maybe in the star bead of the City of Justice, the Blade of Hope had slaughtered the Chu sect venerables before he met him, but at least he didn't feel any crisis. As soon as Han Fei walked into the 4th 9-star pearl of the Chu sect, he didn't feel well. This turned out to be the former Giant King City. Yes, it was the Giant King's city on top of the cliff. Han Fei found the 1,000-mountain ancient realm, the 100,000 mountains, and the former City of Justice. Now, the Giant King City finally appeared. The Giant King City was not the only one here. Han Fei didn't know what method the Giant King used. As soon as Han Fei entered the Giant King City, the phantom of the Giant King appeared. Han Fei was shocked, because this was clearly a rule that could be repeated. He didn't know anyone, so he didn't know Han Fei. He immediately used the 100 Battles Divine Hammer. The 100 Battles Hammer used by the Giant King was no joke. When he left, the Giant King's strength should be at the peak of an advanced venerable. However, after he left, did the Giant King make a breakthrough? Who knew? So, Han Fei also carried the hammer. Dong, dong, dong. After a while, Han Fei confirmed that the power displayed by the Giant King was at the peak level of the Venerable Realm. From the looks of it, the 9-star pearl was extremely dangerous. Looking at the expressionless Giant King, Han Fei was about to break this body. In the end, the Giant King roared, "God of War Possession." Motherfucker, Han Fei didn't feel good. So, did the Chow family's Aries art come from here? However, what Han Fei didn't know was why the Yang family also knew this trick. Could it be that this 9-star pearl was first found by the Yang family? Then, it was snatched away by the Chow clan. And then, the Truman sect. As expected, possession of the battle god was actually the battle god art. But even so, it barely raised the strength of the Giant King to the half-king realm. It was still no match for Han Fei. Even if Han Fei didn't fight back, after 100 seconds, the Giant King's phantom disappeared, perhaps because of energy exhaustion or for some other reason. Han Fei was puzzled. Senior Yuan, what kind of power can allow a person to preserve his complete strength? The old turtle said, "Woo. You know this person too, don't you?" Han Fei nodded. "One of my teachers." The old turtle said, "One way is the Tao of time that you know. You only need a secret realm of time to preserve a part of your strength. The other way is..." Han Fei suddenly woke up and his whole body suddenly trembled. He was surprised to find that he seemed to be in a trance. The old turtle said, "The other way is just like what you are doing now. In fact, it's not that you have entered a time fragment. Instead, it's a kind of soul projection that descends directly into your mind. Once you lose, your soul might perish, and you will become an empty shell." Han Fei took a deep breath. It turned out that what he just experienced was not real. He was still wondering, how on earth did the Giant King retain such a powerful force? When Han Fei walked into the Giant King's palace, it was the same as before. There was nothing special about it. Logically speaking, there were all kinds of bones here. Because the Giant King liked to eat, there was actually nothing valuable in his palace. However, all the bones here had disappeared. They should have been taken by the Chow family. This 9-star bead was actually the only test for the Giant King. The reason why it was listed as a 9-star bead was that few people in the 1,000-star city could pass it safely. Therefore, the difficulty was definitely not low. After learning about this star bead, Han Fei made a mark and directly walked out of the star bead. As soon as Han Fei appeared, his body surged with a murderous aura. Many people were frightened by Han Fei's sudden appearance. After feeling the murderous aura from Han Fei, more people thought to themselves, Marshal Han must have encountered trouble inside. But Han Fei took out another star bead without hesitation and continued to enter. The Thug Academy only had 2 9-star beads in total. The first one, which was the one Han Fei came in now, was a place full of boundless death energy. As soon as Han Fei entered here, there was death energy surrounding him, trying to infect his body. If there was no accident, Han Fei finally knew why Li Daxian turned to the undead realm. This was simply the best place to cultivate. Cultivating in this place full of death energy would definitely yield twice the result with half the effort. The old turtle shouted, "Go quickly. This place should be specially sealed by someone. It's a bit similar to the Death Valley in the cage. Any secret about the undead realm is not something you can get involved in now." As soon as Han Fei entered, before the people who made way for him could stand in formation again, Han Fei's figure flashed and he appeared again. This time, Han Fei was surrounded by death energy, and many people's expressions changed drastically. Many people immediately recognized that it was death energy. And with a thought from Han Fei, a holy light technique descended, dispersing the death energy in an instant. Seeing that many people were looking at him, Han Fei said calmly, "Attention, there are some strange and dangerous star beads. Don't enter if you are not strong enough. The danger of a star bead is usually higher than its corresponding star level. After that, the space in front of Han Fei opened again, and he stepped into it again. Many people waiting in line to enter the normal star bead looked at each other in bewilderment. Someone said, 9-star bead, you can imagine the difficulty. Even General Han has to warn us, which shows how dangerous it is. Someone agreed, of course. In the entire 1,000-star city, very few people can enter the 9-star bead. However, with danger comes opportunity. I'm afraid there are a lot of good things in it. Someone sneered. General Han is interested in the resources in the star bead? Do you know how many resources you can get by wiping out the big families? I heard that General Han donated all of them for the development of the Scattered Stars Island, the 36 towns, and the 1,000-star city. Look, this is courage. This is the spirit of a king. How can General Han covet the things in the star bead? Someone echoed, brother, you're right. General Han may have already become a king, but he's just keeping it a secret. The last 9-star bead was a puppet secret realm. It was the only battle-type secret realm that Han Fei encountered in the 9-star bead. There was a puppet array here, which combined a killing array and a maze array, and its power had reached the level of a half-king. Yes, this was the true strength of a venerable level star bead. Its real strength was horribly dangerous. After exploring all the star beads, Han Fei didn't intend to explore the 8-star beads anymore. In the 10th star bead, Han Fei and the others came to the coffin with the solar calendar stone. After many years, Han Fei returned to this place again. Opening the coffin lid, Han Fei saw Su Jusi lying quietly in the coffin. Han Fei reached out and touched the jade slip that Su Jusi was holding with both hands. Master, have you come back to see Xiaozi? Han Fei thought to himself, in a sense, I am indeed Xiaozi's master, or the little master. Han Fei nodded. Yes, Xiaozi. I can revive you now. However, Ren Tianfei told me that you are not in a good state right now. Although you are covered by the seal coffin, a long time has passed. Even if you revive, you may not have much time left. So, are you going to reincarnate or revive? Su Jusi said in surprise, Master, have you met the controller? Then, have you been to the Divine Palace? Han Fei replied, the Divine Palace is still covered by the Eye of the Heavenly Path. I need to find a way to break the Eye of the Heavenly Path before I become a king. Let me ask you, are you going to revive or choose an opportunity to reincarnate? No matter what, I will take you out of here today. The jade pendant in Han Fei's hand immediately flashed, and Su Jusi's soul fluctuated greatly. Master, I still want to revive first. I haven't seen you for a long time. As for reincarnation, I can still live for hundreds of years anyway. I can cultivate my own reincarnation. Okay. Then I'll take you out first and then revive you. Pure Sun Island. Thug Academy. Since Han Fei wiped out the big families, the Thug Academy returned to the 1,000-star city again. Old Jiang was gritting his teeth and saying to Old Bai. So, we have to recruit heavenly talents. Without Han Fei, when can the Thug Academy return to the 1,000-star city? Old Bai scoffed. How can there be so many heavenly talents? We searched all over the 1,000-star city and only found a few seedlings. After all, the standard should be lowered a little. In the forest, Yi Shiyan and Su Daiji were setting up a maze array, which was designed by Han Fei. At this moment, a group of juniors were trying to restore it. On the back mountain, Han Fei stood there with the coffin on his shoulder. Han Fei spread his arms. Hum above the sky, a pure white beam of light descended and fell straight on the back mountain. All of a sudden, everyone, including Old Bai and Old Jiang, looked at the back mountain. The two of them scanned with their perception and were slightly stunned when they saw Han Fei. Chu Jinan and the others had already rushed to the back mountain. At this moment, they still didn't know that Han Fei was back. It wasn't until they sensed Han Fei that they all exclaimed. Junior brother. Senior brother Han Fei. Yi Shiyan ran wildly and shouted, Senior brother Han Fei, have you become a king? I saw you transcend the tribulation. It lasted for more than an hour. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1652. It was the first time that Han Fei had seen the Thug Academy so lively. Except for his own group, all the members were here. Chu Linyuan and the others were older, so they immediately paid attention to the coffin in front of Han Fei. Looking at the weird shape, they knew that the person inside was probably not an ordinary person. Old Bai shouted, "Be quiet. Don't disturb Han Fei." The heavenly awakening divine technique gave Su Jusi about 5,000 years of vitality. Of course, this was only part of her vitality. Su Jusi's problem was that her soul was greatly damaged, so even if Han Fei revived her, her strength couldn't be restored to the venerable realm, not even half a venerable. In the coffin, Su Jusi moved a little. When she opened her eyes and looked at Han Fei, she was a little stunned. Su Jusi was puzzled for a long time and exclaimed, "Master, how did you become a man?" Han Fei said with a black face, "I never said I was your original master. The master you are talking about should be my mother." Su Jusi flashed out of the coffin and appeared 10 meters away from Han Fei, looking serious. "Nonsense. Master traveled through the river of time. How could she have a son?" You. But why do you have Master's aura?" Han Fei shrugged helplessly, and with a thought, Little Black and Little White appeared. When Su Jusi saw Little Black and Little White, he exclaimed, "Twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish. You are really Master's son. Did Master come back after I fell asleep?" Han Fei shook his head slightly. "I don't know. Anyway, you only need to know that the person who talked to you last time and this time, and the person who saved you just now, is me." Su Jusi's face suddenly turned gloomy, and he finally sighed. "Master still hasn't come back." Su Jusi must know something, which was why Han Fei had to revive her. However, Han Fei was not in a hurry, because he seemed to have a long way to go. Even if Su Jusi quit cultivation and reincarnated, as long as he didn't die, he should still know what he should know. But since Su Jusi wanted to live, of course, he was happy to know in advance. Han Fei said, "She hasn't returned yet. I want to know, where did she go?" When Han Fei summoned the twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, Su Jusi already believed Han Fei. However, Su Jusi was only Jiang Lingxian's maid. What she knew was also limited. Su Jusi shook his head and said, "I don't know. All I know is that it was a very, very ancient era." Han Fei frowned. "What are you going to do? We can't possibly spend so much effort and do nothing, right?" However, Su Jusi still shook his head. "I don't know either." "Oh, before Master left, he said that everything has a source. I don't know what it is, but I think it has something to do with what Master wants to do." "Source?" Han Fei said, "Is there anything you don't know? For example, does my mother have any enemies? Did she say anything special?" Just as Su Jusi was racking his brains, the space around him suddenly trembled. Buzz Han Guanchu leisurely walked out of the void. When he saw Han Fei, he smiled and said, "She actually doesn't know much. Some things seem complicated, but in fact, they are very simple. In the world of cultivation, all the complexity actually comes from the lack of strength. I'll deal with your mother's affairs. You have your own business to deal with. That's the real business." When Su Jusi saw Han Guanchu, he bowed slightly and said, "Greetings, Master of the Nine Temples." Han Fei was so shocked that he almost vomited blood. What the hell was that? Master of the Nine Temples? Jiugong Tian? Master of Jiugong? Han Fei didn't feel good at that moment. The Master of the Nine Temples represented the king, and only the king deserved to be called the Master of the Nine Temples. And old Han was indeed from the Nine Temples. So, old Han used to be a king. Han Guanchu hummed and then looked at Han Fei. "Your mother's problem has nothing to do with the 36 Xiantian books. What really matters is that she was accidentally involved in some secret events. With that said, Han Guanshu said lightly, Xiaozi, come with me in the future. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, Hey, hey. Old Han, let's have a good talk. I just revived her, and now she's taken away by you. Aren't you going to say something? Han Guanshu said with a faint smile, then why don't you let her go with you? Han Fei choked and thought, is it a matter of who I go with? It's a matter of what secrets you're hiding. Han Guanshu looked in the direction of Old Bai and said lightly, let's talk about something. After that, Han Guanshu looked at Su Jusi. You take a rest over there too. Obviously, Su Jusi knew Old Han and seemed to be used to obeying Old Han's orders. But before he left, he still said to Han Fei, Little Master. I really don't know where Master went. After Su Jusi temporarily left, Han Guanshu smiled lightly. How about we make 2 dishes? Han Fei smiled and said, okay. Then let's make 2 dishes. In the academy, before Yi Xian ran to Han Fei, she was pulled back by Old Bai. Old Bai said, Han Fei has his own things to do. When he finishes dealing with them, he will come to meet you. What? All of your strengths have been strengthened, haven't you? Marshal, teach them a lesson. Thud Wang Dashui put the big green door on his shoulder and immediately said, Come on, junior brothers and junior sisters, today's training begins. On the back mountain. Han Fei made a few dishes seriously. The two sat opposite each other, Han Fei stuffed himself with food, and Han Guanshu tasted a little. Halfway through the meal, Han Fei couldn't hold it anymore and finally said, Can you tell me now? Han Guanshu chuckled. You should have experienced a lot of things, but you've been through a lot. I know some of it, but not all of it. I wonder. Do you know that there were ancestors who went east? Han Fei was taken aback for a moment, then nodded and said, yes. Some strong masters created unparalleled big boats, intending to cross the sea. Those people were explorers of the sea. Some people stayed for the humans and other races who couldn't leave here and created the 36 mysterious heavens. Han Guanshu asked, what else? There is danger in the east. This was not the first time that Han Fei knew that there was danger in the east. But what exactly was the danger? Han Fei didn't know. After hearing Han Fei's words, Han Guanshu smiled slightly. In fact, the group of people who stayed behind didn't create the 36 mysterious heavens as soon as they came. Knowing that their strength was limited and that there was nothing they could do, the remaining experts of the human race actually started to head east in search of a new home. Han Fei was shocked. Huh? The remaining people also went east? Then why? Han Guanshu said lightly, why did they come back? Because on the way, we fell into a strange place. Han Fei frowned. Where? Han Guanshu shook his head slightly. I am not a god, so I can only guess. Maybe, it was that place that found us. At that time, although it was the Age of Doom, there were still a lot of real strong masters, even a few kings. At that time, a total of 1,018 people tried to open a sea route, but they mistakenly entered a strange place. Of these 1,018 people, only 102 survived. As if narrating a piece of history, Han Guanshu said leisurely, but you would never have thought that. These 102 people all became kings after they came out. Huh? Han Fei's eyes widened, and he took a deep breath. 102 kings? Han Guanshu nodded. 102 kings at that time, do you know what it meant? They could almost annihilate all the sea clans here. Han Fei thought to himself, isn't that right? He had experienced how strong the kings were. As many as 100 of them. Wouldn't this power sweep across the sea for hundreds of millions of kilometers? However, Han Guanshu said, these people chose to stay because of this. The reason is that when someone gets power, they will always want more. These people didn't intend to create the 36 mysterious heavens. However, since the kings had the strength, they would naturally consolidate and support the human race. So, during that period of time, the kings of the human race and the sea demons fought fiercely. The human race won, and nearly half of the sea demons were wiped out by the kings. Han Fei took a deep breath and said, "Then, where did you go?" Han Fei's attention was now on the magical, weird place in the east. As for the sea demons, Han Fei didn't care about them anymore. Han Guanshu glanced at Han Fei lightly. The human race is insatiable. However, at that time, the kings united and wanted to explore the weird place again. As a result, this time, only 36 kings came out. Gulp. Old Han said it casually, but Han Fei's heart was a little cold. So many died? Not so many died when they were in the venerable realm, right? Han Fei asked, and then? Han Guanshu said, then there were the 36 mysterious heavens. Han Fei was surprised. Didn't these people leave? Han Guanshu asked back, did you hear anything wrong with my story? Han Fei pondered for a moment and said, where did the divine boat of creation go? Old Han immediately chuckled. That's the problem. That weird place is very attractive to many venerables. How could other people not want it? Didn't they encounter this weird place? Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, what do you mean? The second chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1653. The little bit of history that Han Guanshu revealed seemed to have nothing to do with Han Fei's mother. Judging from his tone, if Han Guanshu wanted to know more about his mother, he had to start from the weird place in the east. Indeed, Han Guanshu's story completely moved Han Fei. At least, that was a place where people could become kings. It seemed that as long as they came out, they could become kings. It seemed that as long as they came out, they could become kings. Otherwise, how could the 102 people who came out alive all become kings? Of course, Han Fei was just interested and had no intention of going there now. In fact, his path had already been determined. It was only a matter of time for Han Fei to become a king. Ever since he walked through the cage and saw Xue Fan's tribulation, Han Fei knew that becoming a king was actually not as difficult as others said. However, it happened that it was impossible to become a king in the Yinyang sky. So, becoming a king became the ceiling for cultivators and was described as extremely difficult. Under Han Fei's gaze, old Han said, after all, some people have already gone east. The first batch of people who left were not weak. We can deduce two conclusions as to why they resisted the temptation and continued to explore the boundless ocean. Han Fei. Han Guanshu said, firstly, someone learned of a better place from that weird place. That temptation is greater than becoming a king or even an emperor. Secondly, when those people left, not only did they expose themselves, but they also exposed us to this vast ocean, and that strange place was actually arranged by someone. Wow! Han Fei gasped. Arranged for more than 100 people to become kings? Who has this ability? Han Guanshu said leisurely, in this world, there are countless strong masters. To put it nicely, they are kings, but to put it bluntly, they are just sea expanders. In the endless sea, there are countless strong masters, and there are countless mysterious places. If it is really the second possibility we guessed, then in fact, the entire 36 mysterious heavens is actually someone's enclosure. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed and asked subconsciously, then what are human beings and sea demons? What is this vast sea? A farm? Han Fei suddenly had an idea. I have a question. Why wasn't the first batch of people who took the creation divine boat swallowed by the weird place? Han Guanshu said, none of the 1,000 people who entered the strange land was a king. If ordinary venerables could survive, how could the previous batch of even stronger venerables all perish? Han Fei asked again, then why didn't you deter later? Han Guanshu took a deep look at Han Fei. We can't. What about in another direction? Won't it be fine if we don't go to the east? Han Guanshu said, they will eventually get lost and return to the eastern sea route. Han Fei asked in surprise, is it really so weird? Then what is this sun for? Can't it be used as a guide? Han Guanshu shook his head slightly. How can you be sure that its direction is correct? Han Fei, I don't have a compass. Hiss, Han Fei suddenly thought of something. The nautical multitude instrument. How did such a miraculous mortal artifact come about? Why would someone spend so much money to make such a navigator? Seeing that Han Fei seemed to think of something, Han Guanshu couldn't help but smile. You've guessed it. The existence of the Wanxiang instrument was to point the way. It's a sacred tool that can point the way without any guidance. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, Did my mother make this Wanxiang instrument? Or did you? Han Guanshu sighed slightly. Actually, it was made by the 4 kings together. The Golden Crow Palace, the 9 palaces, the Waterwood Palace, and the Yin-Yang Palace jointly created this Wanxiang instrument. For this thing, the kings of the Golden Crow Palace and the Waterwood Palace died, and your mother and I were trapped in a corner of time. Han Fei's heart was pounding wildly. It turned out that the nautical multitude instrument was the painstaking work of the 4 kings. However, Han Fei couldn't help but look at old Han. A corner of time. Then why did you come back? Han Guanshu chuckled. That's another thing. I was trapped in the river of time, and I had you and Ing. I couldn't go on like this. That's why you saw me trying to kill you. Only when I died would I not be limited by time. So, I, you, and Ing, have all died once. Han Fei didn't know the whole story until this moment. It was like doing one thing led to another thing. It was like a butterfly effect. There was nothing he could do about it. Since it had happened, he had to find a way to solve it. Therefore, a lot of follow-up events occurred. However, after hearing all this, Han Fei immediately said, The River of Time? I know. Halfway through, Han Fei froze for a moment. Old Han, do you know the time dragon carp? Han Fei thought to himself, since old Han has been planning in the Yin-Yang heaven for so long, it's impossible that he doesn't know the ghost ship in the abyssal chasm. So, old Han should also know the time dragon carp. Sure enough, Han Guanshu said lightly, I met her once, but I'm not very familiar with her. I know she has the ability to travel through time. However, this time is not that time. You can't save your mother by crossing the river of time. In fact, some other unforeseen events happened after that. As for what those changes were, you don't have to worry about it. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Why? Are you going to do these things yourself? If you get lost or fall, there won't be anyone to collect your corpse. Han Guanshu said, things are in your own memory. It's just that you are not strong enough to open it. If I can't do it, my suggestion is that you don't come to us. Find a way to become stronger. Don't become a god, but become an emperor. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Old Han, you really think highly of me. Han Guanshu stood up leisurely and chuckled. At least, although the first half of your journey was tortuous, it was almost perfect. Among the thousands of races in the vast sea, there are very few people in the same realm who can beat you. Han Fei rolled his eyes. So, there is still someone who can beat me? Han Guanshu chuckled. That can't be helped. Sometimes, racial restrictions are innate and can't be changed by human beings. However, no matter what race you are, you have to grow. The stronger you are, the smaller the advantage of things like race and bloodline. When you become an emperor, remember, only the strong can change the rules. There are no exceptions. This is the only advice I can give you in the future. Han Fei was silent for a long time and nodded slightly. Okay. Got it. Han Guanshu smiled casually and stepped over to Su Jusi without looking at the dishes on the table. In the next moment, the two of them disappeared in the void without a trace. After Han Guanshu left, the old turtle said, I'm afraid what your father said is right. Being involved in time without dying means that your father and your mother may have been stronger than kings at that time. They may even have reached the emperor realm. Even I dare not say that I can come back alive after entering the river of time. If you don't become an emperor, don't touch this kind of thing. After a long time, Han Fei's eyes glowed fiercely. You're forcing me. My goal is the infinite sea, but growth has become a must. Since the road ahead is so difficult, why can't I make the rules? At this moment, Han Fei's mind was suddenly clear. It was not a matter of the Taoist heart, but a matter of the state of mind. The moment his mind was clear, Han Fei felt the desire to make a breakthrough again. It was like a feather tickling his heart, making Han Fei want to make a breakthrough. However, Han Fei clenched his fists. Since he had already come this far, he was just a step away from the door. Time was not a problem. He had to repair this body first. The old turtle said, if you want to make the rules, you have to be very strong. As your father said, you have to be an emperor. However, if you can rescue my body first, it may be of great benefit. Han Fei grinned. Don't worry. I'll go when I can. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei appeared at the foot of the mountain, where the house of the Thug Academy was located. Senior brother. Senior brother Han Fei. Junior brother. Han Fei waved and said, Senior brother Dashui, why haven't you saved my nephew yet? Wang Dashui was embarrassed. Bai Lu snorted. It shows that he can't. Looking at Wang Dashui, whose face was flushed, Han Fei no longer teased him but looked at Chu Ji Nan sneakily. Little Nan. I have a knife technique. Can I teach you later? Chu Ji Nan shivered. Han Fei wanted to teach him a knife technique? That was never a simple saber technique. In the past, that invincible knife aura almost traumatized him and Ling Yuan. However, this time, Ling Yuan said, Senior brother Han Fei, you said it yourself. This time, we want real combat skills, not your saber skills. Han Fei chuckled. Naughty. However, as you wish, I have a knife technique for you. I'm still using this technique even when I become an explorer. This is the strongest technique called the draw technique. With that, Han Fei casually threw a jade slip over to Chu Ji Nan and Ling Yuan in surprise. However, at the moment when Han Fei threw the draw technique, Su Daji stretched out her hand and Yi Xian screamed, Senior brother, we are the little junior sisters. We are the youngest junior sisters. Han Fei snorted. How can you ask your senior brother for something? At this time, you have to practice. However, there is indeed a body tempering technique that is suitable for Daji. After that, Han Fei pointed his finger at Su Daji and made her fall into a deep sleep. The ancient desolate war body entered her soul. Han Fei pondered for a while and narrowed his eyes. Don't ask me for anything. I've donated everything. Your senior sister Xiao Bai is now the richest woman in the world. You can find a way to cling to her. Chapter 1654. Since he was here, Han Fei chatted with Chu Ji Nan and Yi Xian for a while. On the way, Han Fei built the previous Rubik's Cube library, and then gathered with Old Bai and Old Jiang. As soon as Han Fei came over, he saw Old Jiang with a sullen face and an unhappy look. Han Fei couldn't help but say, Hey, Old Jiang, aren't you happy that you've become a venerable? Are you putting on that face for me to see? Old Jiang snorted coldly. How dare you? How powerful are you now, Han Fei? You've already surpassed the 1,000 stars. How can you still remember us two old guys? Old Bai said leisurely, Han Fei. I'm not criticizing you. The big families have been oppressing our Thug Academy for a long time. Then can you leave us a share? You're donating everything you have. You're really rich. Han Fei was speechless. It turns out that these two old men are coveting the things of the big families. If it were in the past, Han Fei would definitely put a lot of good things at home. However, at some point, perhaps Han Fei discovered that many things were no longer useful to him. He didn't feel anything about the so-called resources. It made no difference to Han Fei whether he donated or not. After all, the entire Yin-Yang heaven was his, and he didn't care about these small profits. It could be seen that Old Bai and the others were a bit narrow-minded. Han Fei said, do you still lack any resources now? As for Chu Jinnan and the others, let them find them themselves. Old Bai said leisurely, have you ever thought about how many trial lands have you destroyed? How many secrets do you think there are in this sea that are worth sharing with the people of this world? Han Fei grinned. Actually, it's not a small number. In fact, there are many secret realms below the Venerable Realm. An area of 8 million kilometers is definitely not small. Don't you think too much? Old Jiang said, do you mean to let them go to the deep sea? That's possible. Han Fei said, of course. Recently, there may be a war, a great war. Old Jiang sneered. You said that the battle between the Scattered Stars Island and the Sea Demons was the greatest war in 10,000 years. Now you're here again. Where's the battle? Han Fei's lips curled up slightly. There will be. This will be an unparalleled battle involving kings. At the same time, it's a battle to expand the human domain and change the structure of the world. Old Bai and Old Jiang looked at each other in bewilderment. Old Bai reached out and touched Han Fei's head. Are you dizzy? How can there be a king in this world? Han Fei rolled his eyes. Okay, you two, get ready. Take them to the Scattered Stars Island. There were also academies over there. The Pure Sun Island Academy is dispensable, and it will most likely not be used in the future. Old Bai immediately said, that's impossible. The Pure Sun Island is the foundation of the Thug Academy. I will never abandon it. Han Fei smiled. Are you sure that the Pure Sun Island is the root of the Thug Academy? Old Bai snorted. What do you mean? Buzz, just at that moment, the space shook and a black-robed person walked out. Who else could it be other than Li Tianshan? Ha ha ha. He's right. The Pure Sun Island is indeed not the root of the Thug Academy. With that said, Li Tianshan looked at Han Fei. Tell them about this. The arrival of Li Tianshan directly attracted everyone's attention. This big shot had also made a move before. However, Wang Dashui and the others had never seen him before. They didn't even know the real Li Tianshan. At this moment, seeing everyone pricking up their ears, Han Fei couldn't help but raise his voice and said, the Thug Academy, formerly known as the Pure Sun Sect, is located in the central holy city. As famous as the Pure Sun Sect, there is also an academy called the Moon Academy. The Pure Sun Sect and the Moon Academy, these two academies used to be the Yin-Yang Heaven. That is, the two most powerful academies in this sea area. Later, they collapsed in the war, and the Moon Academy disappeared. The Pure Sun Sect still exists to this day. So, the original site of the Thug Academy is not on the Pure Sun Island, but in the central holy city. Wow, Old Bai and Old Jiang widened their eyes and looked at each other in bewilderment. This was a secret that even they didn't know. They didn't expect the Thug Academy to have such a background. The two of them couldn't help but look at Li Tianshan, who nodded and said, I didn't want to tell you because it's too embarrassing. It's my fault that the Pure Sun Sect has fallen to this day. However, the central holy city is about to see the light of day again. This secret has to be told eventually. Old Bai and Old Jiang were stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. As for the others, they were also confused. They were all from the Thug Academy, so there was no need for Han Fei to lie to them. For example, Xingyu, Gu Qi, Su Sanqian, and the others had ordinary backgrounds. They had never expected that they would one day enter the most powerful academy in the world. In the end, Old Jiang heaved a sigh of relief. Son of a bitch. Old Bai came back to his senses. I always felt that the Thug Academy had too many high-level techniques. So that's why. Then why can't we go now? Li Tianshan looked at Han Fei. We have to at least wait until he becomes a king. The central holy city was connected to the immortal palace. Before the crisis was resolved, it was not appropriate for him to appear too early. Besides, the current opportunity wasn't enough. After all, Han Fei wasn't a king yet. Seeing the shock on the two old men's faces, Han Fei smiled and said, Okay, President, old Jiang, it's time for me to explain to everyone. The secrets of this world aren't secrets after all. Just as Han Fei was about to leave, he heard Li Tianshan say, by the way, Han Fei, Zhou Yinling is in the cloud-soaring town. Go and take a look when you're free. Han Fei was stunned for a moment before he nodded slightly. Bye. The horizon is so close, and Han Fei disappeared from the Pure Sun Island. Seeing Han Fei's skills, old Jiang and old Bai couldn't help but sigh in amazement. Indeed, he had the demeanor of an expert. In the sky above the thousand-star city, Han Fei stood proudly in the air with his eyes closed. His body was trembling slightly, as if there were many bodies swaying left and right above his main body, trying to squeeze out. After trying for a while, Han Fei slowly opened his eyes. It seems that it's a little difficult to create 38 avatars of a beginner venerable. Han Fei sensed for a moment. Although his real combat strength might have reached the level of a pseudo-king. However, his real realm was only the peak of an advanced venerable. It was still a little difficult to turn into dozens of beginner venerables at once. However, Han Fei could now create hundreds of avatars. Swish, swish, swish in the sky, identical avatars appeared out of thin air one after another. Even cloning couldn't be done so fast. Han Fei said casually, it's a pity that the range I can see is only more than 300,000 kilometers, which is far from enough. Otherwise, I can directly use void descent. I don't know what spell Chun Huangdian used to make a projection descend. The old turtle said gloomily, you're already good enough. If your perception range reaches 100,000 kilometers, you'll be comparable to a king. If you can see 500,000 kilometers at a glance, you're barely a king. What else do you want? Han Fei didn't believe it. You're talking about those extremely weak kings. However, Han Fei felt that if the so-called descend could only descend within the range he could see, wouldn't it be too short? Back then, when Xia Shaochan awakened the heavenly silkworm, Chun Huangdian's clone arrived only a moment later. Although that clone should only have the power of an explorer at that time, it was still very strong. He couldn't even tell how far away the clone was, and yet, he could project himself over and take someone away. The heavenly illusionary descent couldn't do that. Of course, considering Chun Huangdian's strength, he should have been a king. Therefore, Han Fei was certain that the king that the old turtle mentioned must be a very weak king. The range they could reach was only a few 100,000 kilometers. Maybe the real experts could ignore space and arrive directly with a certain signal as a reference point. But he didn't care anymore. The fact that he had so many clones meant that the heavenly illusionary descent was already very strong. He would wait until he became a king before he could arrive at a higher level. The old turtle said, how far do you think a king can see? In fact, 1,000,000 kilometers at most. Don't overthink this level. The difference between it and the venerable realm is only the gap in realms, levels, and daos. Han Fei curled his lips and didn't respond. Han Fei's large number of clones tore the void and disappeared in the sky. And Han Fei's original body also tore the void and left. After splitting into 50 clones, the power of Han Fei's original body was squeezed to the level of a beginner venerable. Therefore, although the heavenly illusionary descent could give the clones combat power, it would also consume the power of the original body. In particular, the power of the soul was not evenly distributed. In fact, the soul of his original body was the main one, affecting the souls of all the clones. There was a latent connection between these souls. The thousand-star city, the 36 towns, the scattered stars island, the level 3 fishery. Han Fei covered all the places that he could reach. Of course, Han Fei arrived with clones instead of through the void, because he had too many clones and could go there directly. At this moment, most of the billions of people in the Yinyang heaven were still doing their own things. All of a sudden, thunderous booms could be heard in the sky. It was as if an imposing voice had suddenly descended. I, Han Fei, announce to the entire world at this moment, billions of people. Everyone, if you have nothing to do, you can listen to me tell you, about the secrets of this world, at this moment, the entire Yinyang heaven was in an uproar. Many people's first reaction was that Han Fei wasn't dead. Therefore, the crack of the great Tao caused by the fall of the previous master was indeed not Han Fei. The first reaction of countless people in the Thousand-Star City was that Han Fei had indeed passed the tribulation. They wondered. Had he become a king now? As for the vast majority of ordinary cultivators, their thoughts were relatively simple. Han Fei said, announced to the entire world at this moment. What did this mean? This meant that all places, including the 36 towns, the Scattered Stars Island, and the Thousand-Star City, had been notified at this moment. How could an ordinary venerable one compare to such a technique? Therefore, many people believed that Han Fei had become a king. Everyone was shocked and worshipped him. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1655. Han Fei's voice drifted over the Thousand-Star City, the Scattered Stars Island, and the 36 towns. At this moment, as long as they were not fighting in the sea, they basically stopped what they were doing. Even in the battle, some people were shouting, "Hurry up and end the battle. Let's compete later." Only some venerables and explorers hidden among the people of the Yinyang heaven, when they sensed the arrival of Han Fei's clone, most people just looked up at the sky and listened to his voice. Han Fei said, "When I swept the big clans in the Thousand-Star City, I said that I would share the secrets of this world with you. Countless people live in this world, but they live in ignorance. For example, before I announced the Scattered Stars Island, everyone in the 36 towns only thought that the Scattered Stars Island was an unknown place that couldn't be touched." Hearing that Han Fei was really talking about secrets, everyone immediately perked up. In the Blue Sea town, Li Gang and the others all stopped doing business, including the diners in the hot pot restaurant. They all looked up at the sky. In the Heavenly Water Village, the old village leader and the others all stopped what they were doing. Since Han Fei swept the Thousand Stars Island, the Heavenly Water Village had become popular. Even the village leader of the Heavenly Sun Village took the initiative to invite him to move the Heavenly Water Village to the central position, but the old village leader refused all of them. And the reason for the refusal was very strange. The old village leader said, "I'm afraid that when Han Fei comes back, he won't know the way. So, the Heavenly Water Village can't be moved." It was conceivable how big the shadow in the heart of the village leader of the Heavenly Sun Village was when he heard the old village leader say this. Cloud Soaring Town, Wind and Rain Village, in the hut where Han Fei used to live, Zhou Ling raised her head and scanned with her perception. Unfortunately, she didn't find Han Fei. From the moment Han Fei swept the Thousand Stars Island, Zhou Ling deeply realized that she was too weak. After so many years, she was only a peak-level explorer, still a step away from becoming a semi-venerable. And what about Han Fei? He had already surpassed the Thousand Stars Island. Therefore, when old Monster Chu announced that he had become a king, although Zhou Ling was also invited to the Thug Academy, she didn't want to go to the Thug Academy without Han Fei. So, she came to the Wind and Rain Village alone and began her life of cultivation. The people on the Scattered Stars Island worshipped Han Fei fanatically. On the street, someone shouted, "Shut the fuck up and listen to General Han. This is a secret you wouldn't have heard even if you were beaten to death before." The guards and captains were all berating, "Pay attention and don't talk." Shueishenqi was also listening and sighing at the same time. He was surprised to find that after the Scattered Stars Island fell into Han Fei's hands, human beings became stronger much faster than he was back then. Those secrets of the past were something that even the aristocratic families only knew a little about. Now, Han Fei was announcing it to the world. How bold and broad-minded did he have to be? In fact, Shueishenqi didn't know that in the world Han Fei came from, knowledge was always shared. Luo Xiaobai and the others were also gathered at this moment. Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Rinquang put their arms around each other's shoulders. Zhang Xuanyu sighed and said, "At Feifei's level, he must be the object of many girls' admiration." Lu Rinquang said yearningly, "I really hope that one day, I can rule the world and be admired by the people like Feifei." Han Fei's voice was neither fast nor slow. and he said in a slightly serious tone, "My compatriots, I won't lie to you. There's no need to lie to you. I'm going to tell you a lot of things. Please listen to me one by one." Han Fei said, "The size of the sea area covered by the 36 towns, the 1,000-star city, and the scattered stars island is limited. It's only 8 million kilometers long and wide. Everyone was trapped in this region of the sea." Some people will ask, what's 8 million kilometers away? Let me tell you, 8 million kilometers away is a circular cage. If that is the first layer of the cage, the sea area we live in is the second layer of the cage. Han Fei revealed the biggest secret in this world without scruples. It could be imagined that the whole world was shocked and the entire Yinyang heaven was in an uproar. Someone exclaimed, "Wow! What? Marshal Han, are you saying that we've always been living in a gigantic cage?" Someone exclaimed in shock, This is truly unimaginable." Someone swallowed. Maybe those who are weak can't discover this secret in their lifetime. But this secret doesn't seem to have any effect on ordinary people. Han Fei naturally knew that 99% of ordinary people couldn't even touch this secret. However, this didn't change the fact that they were imprisoned here. Han Fei said, "Maybe you don't think so." Many people felt that 8 million miles was too far away, and that it was not a range that they could reach. However, if I tell you that in the first layer of the cage 8 million kilometers away, there are hidden fishers and law enforcers like fish in the sea, millions of explorers, and thousands of venerables, what will you think? What? Shoot! Explorers! And millions of them? Wait, is General Han serious? Gulp! What kind of place is that? In the Thug Academy, Old Bai and Old Jiang, who were listening, as well as the teachers and students, were all dumbfounded. And the big families that had been defeated were all dumbfounded when they heard the news. They, who used to have a few venerables in a family, seemed to have suffered an unprecedented blow. Even Chao Tianji of the Chao family was trembling at this moment. Han Fei dared to tell the whole world, which meant that Han Fei wouldn't deceive anyone. He was going to become a king. Every word he said was in line with the path of a king. He definitely wouldn't deceive anyone about this. Even Serenity was dumbfounded. She counted her fingers and murmured, "Thousands of venerables and millions of explorers? Is he crazy?" Han Fei continued, "Of course, you don't have to worry too much. Although there are enemies there are also allies. However, if the human race doesn't become stronger, when that seal is opened, the human race may lose its dominant position. Because then, you will meet a whole new race. And that cage may break the seal within 100 years or even a few decades. I hope everyone will work hard to become stronger. Including me, I need to become stronger. Therefore, I will put the resources I seized from the big families in the 1,000-star city into the 36 towns, the level 3 fishery, the scattered stars island, the 1,000-star city. Human race, if you want to become stronger, go for it." This news stirred the hearts of countless people. Because the danger described by Han Fei was beyond anyone's imagination. Who dared to imagine that millions of explorers would appear in the world? In many villages, people didn't even know what realm law enforcers and explorers were. Some people were still asking each other. A child asked, "Dad, what is the realm of explorers?" The middle-aged man looked solemn. "Son, I don't know what realm explorers are. But the hidden fisher is the angel that comes to the village every year." In the sky, Han Fei paused for about 10 minutes, giving people time to think, understand, and talk to each other. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei said with a smile, "Okay, this is a secret. That's all I'll tell you. By the way, in the 1,000-star city, there should be many people guessing if I have transcended the tribulation and become a king. Heh. I want to transcend the tribulation and become a king now, but I'm still a little short. It's my spiritual beast that is transcending the tribulation. By the way, I've cultivated a lightning body tempering technique. I don't want you to misunderstand me. When I become a king, I will tell the world." Han Fei's words were a bit interesting. although he explained the fact that he hadn't become a king. However, he said that he was still a little short. This kind of ambiguous words was very difficult to distinguish. In particular, Han Fei had just swept the Thousand-Star City and killed the super-strong master who claimed to be a king. So, Han Fei should be closer to a king. Therefore, most people thought that Han Fei was really a little short. The next step was to become a king. Someone laughed. The king of this world is none other than General Han. Who else can surpass the Thousand-Star City? Some people were very keen and naturally caught the loophole in this sentence. He said, General Han said that when I become a king, I will tell the world. This means that General Han is preparing for becoming a king at this moment, someone agreed. Obviously, at General Han's level, he may pursue two things, one is to protect the world, and the other is to become a king. On the Scattered Stars Island, Yu Lingyun, He Xiaoyu, and the others who had been with Han Fei for a long time, sighed with emotion after hearing Han Fei's words. Of course, at this time, they were no longer pursuing love and affection. After all, they weren't young anymore. Besides, the more a person pursued a higher level, the more obsessed he would be. Of course, in any case, Han Fei was their role model. At this time, Han Fei said again, Okay, let's talk about the second secret. Just now, I said that the sea area we live in has a length of 8 million kilometers. In fact, there used to be a king in this sea area. And the king lived in a place called Divine Palace. 70 or 80,000 years ago, an ancestor fought sea demons, established the floating island, and established the Thousand-Star City. Therefore, above the Thousand-Star City, there was a king's residence, which was the Divine Palace. The Divine Palace ruled the Thousand-Star City, then the 36 towns, and the entire human world. In another round of exclamations, Han Fei said leisurely, however, the ancient wars were endless, and the king couldn't last for hundreds of thousands of years. And the war between human beings and sea demons was never forbidden. Therefore, the immortal palace in this part of the sea has declined. However, I hope that you will remember the name of this immortal palace, because it was the one that created the current human race. Its name is the Yin-Yang Divine Palace. Our world is called the Yin-Yang Sky. Chapter 1656. The secret of the Yin-Yang Heaven had been revealed to the world. Of course, this didn't mean much to those with ordinary aptitudes. For example, in Han Fei's heavenly water village, a hidden fisher was respected as an angel. The immortal palace? It had always been a legendary existence. So, why did Han Fei want to tell the world? After countless trials, Han Fei knew that people couldn't focus on the present but had to take a long-term view. What people needed to see was the trend of the future. If ordinary cultivators didn't know this, children wouldn't be able to hear the stories that fascinated them. And this would form a vicious cycle. As long as there was desire in people's hearts, they could become strong. Therefore, Han Fei only talked about the secret today in order to inspire the human race in this world. Han Fei explained the secret of the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Immortal Palace. Many ordinary people still didn't feel anything after hearing it. After all, they had been fishermen all their lives. What did the Immortal Palace have to do with them? Maybe they would only take it as a story and tell it to children. At this time, the people who had the greatest reaction were the descendants of the former aristocratic families. For example, Yang Deyu, Mo Fian, Li Hai, Li Baizhou, Zhang Wen, Wang Zitian, Chen Aochen, Chao Qiu, Chao Tian, and Chao Jiaran of the same generation as Han Fei. After hearing Han Fei's explanation, they finally understood why their families had been struggling for so many years. When all these events were connected, they could figure out the problem. Han Fei felt that old Monster Chu should have known these things a little earlier. It was a pity that if old Monster Chu knew that his direction was wrong from the beginning, what would he think? Old Monster Chu wanted to find the entrance to the Immortal Palace from Su Jusi. However, even if he really found Su Jusi, what could he do? Ren Tianfei was the controller. If he said there was no way here, then there was no way. Everyone in the Chu sect would never step into the immortal palace in this life. Although people were talking about it enthusiastically, Han Fei knew that it was far from exciting enough. So, Han Fei added, There are a total of 36 immortal palaces like the Yin-Yang heaven in this world. Yes, corresponding to the 36 seas. These immortal palaces are collectively known as the 36 mysterious heavens. And our Yin-Yang heaven is one of them. Many people were stunned at that moment. Someone was dumbfounded. What the hell? One Yin-Yang sky is 8 million miles long. Then the 36 immortal palaces. Someone took a deep breath. Just how big is this world? 36 profound heavens? Doesn't that mean there should be 36 rulers? Someone was puzzled. Why haven't we seen the other powerhouses of the other 36 profound heavens? Han Fei said, because the Yin-Yang heaven declined, the divine palace was moved out of the infinite ocean and locked here. Their goal might be to prolong the human bloodline. However, the human race will eventually rise, and Yin-Yang heaven will usher in a golden age. Han Fei blabbered on, but he didn't know how many people really listened to him. In fact, Han Fei knew that he was only speaking to 1% of the people in the Yin-Yang sky. Most people's spiritual veins were not high enough, so they thought, even if the sky falls, there's someone tall to hold it up. Most of them couldn't become experts. However, that 1% was enough. These people were the future hope of Yin-Yang heaven. In fact, Han Fei did not underestimate the determination of people in a world where everyone cultivated. Otherwise, why would Han Fei distribute a large number of resources? Wasn't it to arouse the fighting spirit of countless people? For example, Old Jiang and the others were indeed too small. At this time, Han Fei painted a more magnificent world, and even Han Fei himself realized how insignificant he was. As he spoke, he couldn't help but feel excited. At this time, Han Fei suddenly changed the topic. Everyone, the Yin-Yang heaven has been declining for too long. In the current Yin-Yang heaven palace, there is the mystery of why it is impossible to become a king here. In the future, we will work hard. You work hard to become stronger, and I will work hard to break the pattern of the Yin-Yang heaven not being able to become a king. Who dares to respond to me? As soon as Han Fei spoke, he commanded everyone. In an instant, a chorus of responses shook the entire area where humans lived. Someone shouted, General Han has already become the strongest venerable, and you are so persistent and hardworking. How can we relax? On the scattered stars island, countless people shouted. We will definitely work hard to become stronger. For the rise of the human race. On the dragon boat, hundreds of thousands of people shouted in unison. The scene shook the fish under the dragon boat and scattered. Han Fei's clones, hearing the tide of voices, knew that it was about time. Han Fei also knew that it was time to tell the last thing. Yes, all these secrets were only for some people to hear. What Han Fei wanted to mobilize now was only the emotions of some people. By the way, he would tell these secrets so that they could be passed down from generation to generation and warn each other. At the same time, it was also to prepare for him to ascend to the throne in the future and transcend the tribulation to become a king. At this time, Han Fei said leisurely, Now, I will tell you the last secret. This may change the fate of many people. Han Fei said, Next to our Yin-Yang heaven, there is a caged forbidden land, where there is another great palace of the 36 mysterious heavens, called the Waterwood Heaven. Huh? What? There really are other immortal palaces? Someone sighed. I've never heard of these things, General Han. I wonder what the Waterwood Heaven looks like. How strong are the humans there? Han Fei's voice rippled. There used to be 3 kings in the Waterwood Heaven. A few months ago, one died. Now, there are 2 kings standing side by side in the world. Yes, you heard me right. According to the legend, there are still 2 powerful kings in the Waterwood Heaven. One is an ally, and the other is a sea demon king. I once made a deal with the life queen of the Waterwood Heaven to help her wipe out 2 royal cities. Now, I've only wiped out one, and I still need to destroy the sea race's royal city. Gulp. 3 kings standing side by side. General Han is also involved in it. Serenity was shocked. When did this happen? Why didn't I know? I even contacted the queen. But I didn't hear of such a thing happening. Someone said, is General Han strong enough to cooperate with kings now? Someone was also suspicious. What does General Han mean? Why did you tell us about that kind of battle? Han Fei said, I and the Waterwood Heaven will renew our old alliance and help each other. Therefore, I propose that anyone above the realm of Hidden Fisher in the Yin-Yang Heaven can voluntarily follow me to conquer foreign lands. Listen, it's voluntary. The benefit is, for those who participate in the expedition, I will propose to the Life Queen that you can interact with the alien races in the Waterwood Heaven for a few years. How many opportunities you can get from the Waterwood Heaven depends on your ability. Now, although there were still a large number of sea demons in the Yin-Yang Heaven, they were not strong enough. Besides, under the large-scale hunting of human beings, at least 20% of the more than 3 million sea demons had died. Since the sea demons were not strong enough, the Waterwood Heaven was an excellent place for training. Han Fei knew very well that the quality of spiritual energy in the Waterwood Heaven was slightly higher. Besides, there were 4 major battlefields for training. In the future, if there was a full-scale expedition, this would be an opportunity. Of course, opportunities were also accompanied by danger. If you wanted to get opportunities and grow quickly, the premise was that you could survive. Therefore, death was inevitable. But even in the Yin-Yang Heaven, this kind of death also existed. Serenity soon found Han Fei's body above the cloud-soaring town. She said, Han Fei, are you crazy? Are you going to attack the Baibei royal city with the Yin-Yang Heaven? Does the queen know about this? Han Fei grinned. Do you think she will refuse? Han Fei said bluntly, once the White Armor Emperor dies, the Life Queen will dominate the entire Waterwood Heaven. When a king falls, the Life Queen will benefit the world. The one who will benefit the most is still the Life Queen. Besides, Han Fei was not worried that the Life Queen would attack the Yin-Yang Heaven. First of all, it was unnecessary. Second, she couldn't come herself. Otherwise, the Heavenly Path Dharma I would definitely take action. If she just let the venerables and explorers of the Waterwood Heaven come, the Life Queen was not an idiot. Han Fei's experience and growth told her that the identity of the master of the Yin-Yang Heaven was basically fixed. At this time, there was no benefit in annoying Han Fei. The point was that the Life Queen was Han Fei's junior sister after all. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, she couldn't deny it. Of course, there would definitely be people who would question it. In the Thousand Star City and the Scattered Stars Island, there were voices asking the sky at the same time. These voices came from Chao Tianji and Shueishenqi. Shueishenqi said, will the king of the Waterwood Heaven covet the Yin-Yang Heaven? Chao Tianji said, since General Han has not become a king, how can he become an alliance king? Many people fell silent. Those who dared to ask Han Fei face to face should be very strong. At least in the venerable realm. Han Fei said with a smile, some people are wondering. Is my alliance with the Waterwood Heaven inviting fish into my house? Since someone has asked, I'll answer it. The reason why there has been no king in the Yin-Yang Heaven for 10,000 years is that the Great Tao here is closed and watched by the Heavenly Path. In fact, the kings don't dare to enter the Yin-Yang Heaven. Even the Black Killer King, who once fought with me on the Scattered Stars Island, was just a projection of a venerable. Since the kings don't come, I'll say that I'm invincible under the king level. Are you satisfied with this explanation? Han Fei had said enough today. The major decisions in this world had to be made by someone. And now, he was the only one who could make a decision. Of course, he made a decision. And if he did this well, he would be the uncrowned king of the Yin-Yang Heaven. In the future, when the Yin-Yang Heavenly Tribulation was broken, he would definitely be the king. Han Fei's words were certainly effective. At this moment, countless hidden fissures in the Thousand-Star City and a large number of retired powerhouses from the 36 towns set off one after another. They were strong, and their cognition was naturally different from that of most ordinary people. They knew that all the resources in the world had to be fought for by themselves. Now, Han Fei had fought for an opportunity for them. In any case, they had to go and have a look. After all, Han Fei was the only super powerhouse who had swept the Thousand-Star City and topped the Yin-Yang Heaven. Besides, the position of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island was even more convincing than Han Fei's name. They had to believe it.